Story 1. My brother stood up at Thanksgiving dinner, glass in hand, and announced, "I've made a decision about Mom's house. I'm selling it to buy myself a $300,000 G-Wagon. She can move into a nursing home." When Mom's eyes filled with tears, he shrugged and said, "It's just business. You'll be better off there anyway." Everyone at the table froze. I took a sip of water and said, "Interesting plan, Craig. There's just one problem." I slid an envelope across the table. His face went white when he saw. Thanksgiving this year was supposed to be normal. Well, as normal as holidays get when you've got a family like mine. Mom had been cooking since Tuesday, the house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon, and for once, Craig actually showed up on time. That should have been my first warning sign. My older brother is never on time for anything unless there's money involved. We were all sitting around the dining room table, me, my wife Sarah, Mom, Craig, his girlfriend Amber, a woman he'd been dating for exactly 6 weeks but talked about like she was his soulmate, and my younger sister Beth with her husband Marcus. The usual crowd. The turkey was carved, plates were full, and Mom was just starting to relax when Craig stood up. He was wearing this expensive suit, the kind with subtle pinstripes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. His wine glass caught the light from the chandelier as he raised it, and everyone went quiet the way you do when someone's about to make a toast. "I want to make an announcement," Craig said, smiling that salesman smile he perfects in the mirror every morning. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About family. About responsibility." Mom beamed. She actually beamed at him. "Gosh, that makes my chest tight even now. And I've made a decision about this house," he continued, gesturing around at the Victorian our parents bought 42 years ago, where all three of us kids grew up, where Mom still lived alone since Dad passed 5 years back. "I'm going to sell it." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. "The market's really strong right now," Craig went on, completely oblivious, or maybe just not caring, about the way Mom's face was changing. "I've already had it appraised. We're looking at around $700,000, easily. After closing costs and fees, that leaves me with enough to finally get the Mercedes G-Wagon I've had my eye on. The one with the AMG package. $300,000, fully loaded." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Beth made a sound like she'd been punched. Marcus just stared, his mouth slightly open. But Mom was the one who broke my heart. Her eyes filled with tears so fast I could see them pooling, threatening to spill over. Her hand, the one with the wedding ring she still wore every single day, trembled as she set down her glass.
"Craig, honey, I don't understand," she managed.
"This is my home." He shrugged. Actually shrugged, like she'd just asked him about the weather. "It's just business, Mom. You'll be better off in a nursing home anyway. They've got activities, people your age, medical staff on site. It's the smart move." "I'm 68 years old," Mom whispered. I don't need a nursing home. Not yet, maybe. But this is about planning ahead. Being practical." Craig took a sip of his wine, completely casual, like he hadn't just suggested throwing our mother out of her own house. "Look, I've done the research. There's a really nice facility about 40 minutes from here. They've got a waiting list, but I know a guy who can get you in. You'd have your own room, shared bathroom. It's perfect." That's when I took a sip of water, more to buy myself 3 seconds to think than because I was thirsty. My hands weren't shaking yet, but they wanted to. The rage building in my chest felt like swallowing hot coals. "Interesting plan, Craig," I said, keeping my voice level. "There's just one problem." I reached into my jacket pocket, I'd worn one specifically for this moment, though I'd hoped I wouldn't need to use it, and pulled out a manila envelope. 9 by 12 inches. Sealed. Heavy with paper. I slid it across the table slowly enough that everyone could watch it move. It made a soft whisking sound against the tablecloth, crossing from my end of the table to his. Craig's face went white. Not pale. White. Like someone had literally drained the blood from his head. "What?" he started, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "What is that?" "Open it," I said. He didn't move. His hand was frozen halfway to the envelope, and I could see the exact moment he understood that I knew. Whatever he'd been planning, whatever he thought he could get away with, I knew. "Open it," I repeated, quieter this time. More dangerous. Beth leaned forward. "Jake, what's going on?" "Craig's about to explain," I said, never taking my eyes off my brother. "Aren't you, Craig?" He picked up the envelope like it might explode. His fingers fumbled with the seal, and papers slid out onto the table. Legal documents. Bank statements. Emails. Printed text messages. A dozen pages, maybe more. The top page was a quitclaim deed. Signed by our mother. Dated 3 months ago. Transferring full ownership of the house from Catherine Marie Walsh to Craig Andrew Walsh. Mom gasped. Craig, I never signed that." "It's okay, Mom," I said, still watching my brother's face cycle through shock, fear, and calculation. He forged it. Didn't you, Craig? That's insane, he sputtered. I would never. Page 3, I interrupted. Those are the bank records showing you hired a notary service that specializes in, let's call it, flexible documentation. Cost you $800. You paid with your business credit card. Not your smartest move. Amber pushed away from the table. Craig, what is he talking about? Pages 4 through 7 are the emails between you and the property appraiser, I continued. You specifically asked him to value the house assuming Mom wasn't living there. Asked him to note foundation issues that don't exist. Termite damage we've never had. All to drive down the value for tax purposes while you pocket the difference. Craig was shaking his head, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish drowning in air. Page 8 is my personal favorite, I said, and I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice anymore. That's the email to Sunset Meadows Nursing Home, the facility you mentioned, where you specifically wrote, and I quote, "My mother has moderate dementia and can no longer care for herself. Please send me your long-term care contract and monthly rate sheet." Mom doesn't have dementia, Beth nearly shouted. She teaches quilting classes at the community center. She volunteers at the library every Wednesday. I know, I said. But the nursing home didn't. They just saw a concerned son making arrangements for his declining mother. Except you weren't arranging care. You were arranging a permanent warehouse so you could liquidate her assets. The silence that followed was the kind you feel in your bones. Even the old house seemed to be holding its breath, the usual creaks and settling sounds gone quiet. Sarah touched my arm. How long have you known? 6 weeks, I admitted. Mom called me in early October. Said Craig had been asking her weird questions about the house deed. Whether Dad had left it in a trust. Who the title was under. She thought he was just curious, maybe thinking about his own estate planning, but something felt off to her. So I started looking. I'd spent those 6 weeks becoming someone I didn't particularly like. I'd hired a private investigator, a guy named Dennis who used to work white-collar crime for the state police before retiring, and together we'd peeled back every layer of Craig's plan. It was actually impressive in a deeply horrifying way. He'd been setting this up for almost a year, slowly building the paper trail that would let him declare Mom incompetent, take control of her assets, and sell everything before any of us could stop him. The G-Wagon wasn't even the main prize. That was just his treat-yourself reward. The real money would come from liquidating everything else, Mom's savings, her retirement accounts, the small investment portfolio Dad had left her. Craig had been positioning himself as her financial power of attorney, her healthcare proxy, her everything. And because he's a successful commercial real estate broker, because he wears expensive suits and drives a Lexus and talks fast with confidence, people believed him. They believed him when he told Mom's bank manager she was getting forgetful and might need help with her account soon. They believed him when he suggested to her doctor that she might need a cognitive evaluation, something the doctor gently brought up with Mom, who was so confused and hurt she didn't mention it to anyone but me. They believed him because Craig has this gift for making lies sound like loving concern. But he'd made mistakes. Little ones, mostly, but enough. He'd used his work email for some of the correspondence instead of his personal one. He'd gotten sloppy with the notary service payment, leaving a paper trail that Dennis traced back in about 40 minutes. And he'd underestimated me. See, Craig has always thought of me as the soft brother. The middle child who became a civil engineer instead of going into business, who married his college girlfriend instead of playing the field, who bought a modest house in a good school district instead of a downtown condo with a view. He's said it to my face more than once, "You're too nice, Jake. You let people walk all over you." He was about to learn exactly how not nice I could be when someone threatened our mother. "You can't prove any of this," Craig finally said, but his voice had no strength. He was grasping at anything, his eyes darting between the documents and the door like he was calculating whether he could just run. "Actually, I can. I have. The district attorney's office has had a copy of everything in that envelope for the past week. They're very interested in financial elder abuse cases right now. Apparently, it's an epidemic." Amber stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. "I didn't know anything about this." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. Amber seemed like a decent person who'd just gotten tangled up with the wrong guy. "You should probably leave before this gets worse." She grabbed her purse and was gone before Craig could form a protest. The front door opened and closed, and then it was just family left at the table. Family and the wreckage of what was supposed to be a nice holiday dinner. Mom was crying now, quiet tears rolling down her face. Beth had moved to sit beside her, one arm around her shoulders, and Marcus looked like he wanted to put Craig through the wall but was wisely restraining himself. "I was trying to help," Craig said weakly. "The house is too big for her. She can't maintain it by herself." "Then you should have offered to help her maintain it," Sarah said sharply. "Or suggested she downsize to something smaller. Or literally anything other than forging documents and committing fraud." "I want you to leave," Mom said. Her voice was small but firm. Right now. Get out of my house. Mom, come on. Get out. Craig looked at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen in my older brother's face before. Fear, yes, but also something deeper. A kind of desperate confusion, like he genuinely couldn't understand how this had gone so wrong, how his perfect plan had collapsed so completely. You're really going to send me to prison? He asked. Your own brother? You were really going to put our mother in a nursing home so you could buy a car, I replied. So yeah. I am. He left. Gathered his coat, his keys, walked out without another word. The Lexus started in the driveway, and then he was gone, tail lights disappearing down the quiet suburban street where we'd learned to ride bikes and played flashlight tag on summer nights. The dinner was ruined, obviously. Nobody had any appetite after that. We packed up the leftovers in silence, put away the dishes, tried to comfort Mom, who kept saying she was fine but clearly wasn't. How do you process that your own son tried to steal your life out from under you? Sarah and I stayed over that night, sleeping in my old bedroom with its faded baseball wallpaper and the desk where I'd done homework for 12 years. I couldn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah breathe beside me, and wondering if I'd done the right thing or just irreparably broken what was left of our family. My phone buzzed around 2 a.m. A text from an unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I deleted it. Blocked the number. Tried not to think about what Craig might do when desperation and anger mixed together. The next 2 weeks were a blur of lawyers and police reports and family drama that spread through our extended relatives like wildfire. Some of them thought I'd overreacted. Family should stick together, my Aunt Linda said when she called. You don't send your brother to prison over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I told her. It was fraud. It was abuse. And if I hadn't stopped him, Mom would have lost everything. Others got it. Beth was furious, at Craig, at the situation, at herself for not noticing sooner. Marcus offered to help with legal fees if we needed it. My Uncle Tom, Dad's younger brother, called Mom every single day just to check in. And Mom was struggling. She blamed herself somehow, convinced she must have done something wrong to make Craig think this was acceptable. She kept asking if maybe she was too old to be living alone, if maybe Craig had a point buried under all the criminal behavior. You're 68 and you ran a 5K last spring, I reminded her. You're on the board of the Historical Society. You still do the Sunday crossword in pen. Stop letting his poison get into your head. Craig, meanwhile, had disappeared. Not literally, we knew he was still in the city because his office confirmed he was coming into work, but he wasn't answering calls or texts from anyone in the family. His social media went dark. It was like he'd decided if he couldn't have the house, he'd just erase us all instead. Fine by me. I had bigger concerns. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Cho, told us the case was solid but complicated. Elder abuse is notoriously difficult to prosecute, she explained in her office downtown, surrounded by law books and case files. We have to prove intent, prove he knew what he was doing was wrong, prove damages. His lawyer will argue he was just trying to plan for your mother's care, that it was a misunderstanding, that family disputes shouldn't be criminalized. But you have the forged deed, I said. The fake notary. The false medical claims. I do. And it's good. But juries are unpredictable, especially with family cases. They see a son and mother, and they want to believe the best. She leaned forward. However, there might be another option. That's when things got interesting. Turns out Craig had pulled similar schemes before. Not with family, he wasn't completely stupid, but with elderly clients in his commercial real estate business. 3 different cases over the past 7 years where he'd convinced older property owners to sell to him at below market rates, using tactics that walked right up to the line of legal. One of those property owners, a retired teacher named Harold Brennan, had filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission 2 years ago, but nothing had come of it because Harold couldn't prove deliberate fraud. Until now. If Harold is willing to make a formal statement, and if we can tie these patterns together, we're not looking at one isolated incident, Patricia explained. We're looking at a pattern of predatory behavior. That changes everything. I found Harold myself. He was 79, living in a cramped apartment after losing the building he'd owned for 30 years, the building Craig had bought from him for a fraction of its value and then flipped 6 months later for a massive profit. Harold was bitter, understandably, but also tired of fighting. What's the point? He asked me over coffee at a diner near his place. I already lost everything. Dragging it all back up won't change that. It might protect someone else from losing everything too, I said. And it might get you some justice. He stirred his coffee for a long time, watching the cream swirl into the dark liquid. Your brother has a gift, he finally said. He makes you feel like he's your best friend right up until the moment he's stabbing you in the back. Even then, he'll convince you it's for your own good. I know. You really going to see this through? Even if it means destroying him? I thought about Mom's face at Thanksgiving dinner. The tears. The betrayal. The way she'd said "I don't understand" like her whole world had just tilted sideways. "Yes," I said. "I really am." Harold gave his statement. So did two other elderly victims Dennis had tracked down, people Craig had pressured and manipulated over the years. The case transformed from a single family dispute into something much bigger, much uglier. The State Real Estate Commission opened a formal investigation. His broker's license got suspended pending review. Craig's perfect life started crumbling like wet cardboard. His girlfriend Amber, who, it turned out, was actually a pretty decent person, came forward with her own information. She told investigators that Craig had asked her to be a witness to Mom's declining mental state, wanted her to sign an affidavit saying she'd observed confusion and forgetfulness. She'd refused, thought it was weird, but hadn't realized the full scope of what he was planning. "I feel like such an idiot," she told me when she reached out. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us uncomfortable but necessary. All those little comments about his family, about his mother needing help. I just thought he was a concerned son. "He's very good at playing concerned," I said. "I broke up with him the night after Thanksgiving. He tried to convince me you were the villain, that you'd always been jealous of him, that this was your way of stealing the inheritance." She shook her head. "But I saw your mother's face. Nobody can fake that kind of hurt." 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Craig called me. First time I'd heard from him directly since the dinner disaster. "We need to talk," he said when I answered. No hello, no preamble. "Through our lawyers," I replied. "Please. 5 minutes. Face to face." Something in his voice made me pause. Not the confidence I was used to, not the smooth salesman tone. He sounded tired. Beaten. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a park near the house where we grew up, sitting on benches near the playground where we'd played as kids. It was cold, early December wind cutting through my jacket, and the park was empty except for us and a few determined joggers. Craig looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping. The confidence that usually radiated from him was just gone, replaced by something hollow. "I'm sorry," he said. I waited. Didn't say anything. Wanted to see where he'd go with it. "I know that doesn't fix anything. I know you probably don't believe me. But I am sorry." He stared at his hands, at the wedding ring he still wore even though his marriage had ended in divorce 3 years ago. I convinced myself it was the right thing, that Mom would be better off with professional care, that I was being practical, that, he stopped. Started again. "That's not true. None of that's true. I wanted the money. I wanted the validation of having that car, that lifestyle. And I told myself whatever I needed to tell myself to make it okay." "Did you ever think about what it would do to her?" I asked quietly. "Did you think about how it would feel to have your own son betray you like that?" "I tried not to think about it at all," he admitted. "That's the thing. I just didn't think. I saw what I wanted and I went for it, and everything else was just obstacles to work around. Including Mom. Including Mom." We sat in silence for a while. A crow landed nearby, pecked at something in the grass, flew away. "I'm not going to drop the charges," I finally said. "I'm not going to tell the DA to go easy on you. What you did was unforgivable. I know. But I don't hate you. I want you to know that. You're my brother. I remember when you taught me to throw a football. When you stayed up all night helping me with my college application essays. When you sat with me in the hospital after Dad died and we just sat there. That person is still in there somewhere, and I hope you find him again. But that person doesn't get to hurt Mom and walk away." Craig nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He stood, buttoned his coat. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you stopped me. I don't know how far I would have gone if you hadn't." He walked away then, and I watched him go. Part of me wanted to call him back, to find some way to fix this, to make it all okay again. But you can't fix some things. You can only survive them and hope everyone comes out the other side changed for the better. The legal process ground on. Craig took a plea deal in February, 10 months probation, mandatory counseling, restitution payments to his previous victims, and permanent loss of his real estate license. No jail time, which frustrated me, but Patricia explained that first-time white-collar offenders rarely see prison unless the dollar amounts are massive or there's violence involved. "He's effectively lost his career," she said. "His reputation. His family. That's its own kind of prison. Maybe. I don't know. Part of me still thinks he got off too easy. Mom is doing okay. Better than okay, actually. She sold the house in March, her decision, made with a clear mind and no pressure, and bought a smaller place closer to Beth. She seems happier, lighter somehow, like removing the weight of that big Victorian also removed some invisible burden she'd been carrying. She started painting again, something she gave up decades ago, and her little sunroom is full of canvases and the smell of oil paints. She doesn't talk about Craig much. When she does, it's with a kind of sad resignation, Like she's mourning someone who died rather than someone who betrayed her. Maybe that's healthier. I don't know. Sarah and I had a baby in April, a daughter we named Catherine, after Mom. She's 5 months old now as I write this, and watching Mom hold her granddaughter, seeing that pure joy on her face, makes me think maybe some good came out of all this darkness after all. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night sometimes. That makes me question whether I'm actually the good guy in this story or just another shade of gray. I knew Craig was planning something by early October. I had confirmation of the forgery by mid-October. I could have confronted him privately then, could have stopped it quietly, could have given him a chance to back off before Thanksgiving, before the public humiliation, before the legal destruction. But I didn't. I waited. I let him walk into that dinner thinking he'd won, let him stand up in front of the whole family and reveal himself as the villain. I wanted the shock value. I wanted everyone to see what he'd become. And yeah, I wanted revenge. Not for me, for Mom, but revenge nonetheless. Was that justice? Or was it just cruelty dressed up in righteous clothing? Dennis, the investigator, told me something during all this that stuck with me. We were reviewing documents in his office, and I asked him how he dealt with this kind of thing day after day, people betraying family, stealing from the vulnerable, lying and manipulating and destroying lives. You learn to live with gray, he said. Good people do bad things. Bad people do good things. Your brother isn't a monster, he's just a human who made monstrous choices. And you stopping him, that was good. But how you did it? That's got some darkness in it too. We're all just trying to navigate between those extremes without losing ourselves completely. I think about that a lot. Craig reached out to Mom last month. Sent a letter, actual paper, actual handwriting, not an email or text. She showed it to me. 3 pages of apology, of explanation, of regret. He's working as a sales manager at a car dealership now, trying to rebuild. He asked if she'd consider having coffee with him someday, when she's ready, if she's ever ready. She hasn't responded yet. I don't know if she will. What do you think I should do? She asked me. I think you should do whatever feels right to you, I told her. If you want to forgive him, forgive him. If you don't. Either way, I've got your back. That's the truth of it, really. I spent 6 weeks planning Craig's downfall, spent months watching it play out, and I'd do it all again. But I also miss my brother. I miss the version of him that existed before greed and ambition twisted something fundamental in his character. I miss what our family used to be. You can't get that back, though. You can only move forward and hope the people you love find their way to better versions of themselves. So that's my story. The story of how my brother tried to steal our mother's house to buy a luxury car, and how I destroyed him for it. I'm writing this because people keep asking what happened, why Craig and I don't talk anymore, why Thanksgiving at Mom's new place has this weird empty space where he used to be. Now you know. Was I right to do what I did? I honestly don't know. Some days I'm certain. Other days I wonder if I became exactly what I was fighting against, someone willing to hurt family to get what they wanted. But here's what I do know, Mom is safe. She's happy. She's painting sunsets in her sunroom and teaching baby Catherine how to make funny faces. The house where we grew up is owned by a young couple with 2 kids who are filling it with new memories. And Craig is alive, employed, and maybe, possibly, slowly learning to be a better person. That has to count for something. The envelope I slid across the table that night didn't just destroy my brother. It destroyed the illusion that family is sacred, that blood is thicker than water, that love conquers all. But maybe those are illusions we need to lose sometimes. Maybe real family isn't about sharing DNA or a last name. Maybe it's about showing up, protecting each other, and being willing to do the hard, uncomfortable, sometimes terrible things when someone you love is in danger. I protected my mother. I stopped someone from hurting her, even though that someone was my brother. Even though it cost me a relationship I valued. Even though it revealed parts of myself I'm not proud of. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. But I'll carry the weight of it forever, the knowledge that I was willing to destroy my brother to save my mother, and the uncomfortable question of what that says about who I really am. Some victories don't feel like winning. They just feel like survival. And maybe that's enough. It's been 3 weeks since Mom sent her response to Craig's letter. She agreed to coffee. They met last Tuesday at a place downtown, neutral territory. She told me afterward it was difficult but necessary. He cried. She didn't. They talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing, about the past and the future and whether forgiveness is even possible after something like this. I don't know if I'll ever trust him again, she said. But he's still my son. That doesn't go away just because he hurt me. I told her I understood, even though I'm not sure I do. My relationship with Craig remains frozen in that moment at Thanksgiving dinner, in the white shock on his face when he opened the envelope. We've exchanged maybe 10 words total since February. Part of me wants to rebuild something with him. Part of me thinks that ship has sailed so far it's not even visible on the horizon anymore. Sarah says I need to let it go, That holding on to anger will poison me more than it hurts him. She's probably right. She usually is about these things. But then I'll be playing with Catherine, watching her grab at my fingers with her tiny hands, and I'll think about what Craig was willing to do for money and status and a stupid car. I'll think about what kind of person does that to their own mother. And the anger comes back, hot and immediate, like touching a stove I forgot was on. Maybe it'll fade with time. Maybe 20 years from now, Craig and I will be older men who can look back on this as a terrible mistake that eventually got fixed. Maybe we'll tell our kids and grandkids the story and shake our heads at how close we came to permanent destruction. Or maybe this is just who we are now. The brother who betrayed and the brother who retaliated. Forever locked in that Thanksgiving moment, frozen like people in a photograph you can't quite bring yourself to throw away. I don't have a neat ending for this story because the story isn't over. It's still unfolding, day by day, choice by choice. Every time Mom calls to tell me about her latest painting. Every time I see Craig's number in my blocked contacts list. Every time I wonder if I was the hero or the villain of this particular tale. The envelope I slid across that table contained truth. Just truth, facts and evidence and the undeniable reality of what Craig had planned. But truth is a weapon, too. And I wielded it with precision and purpose, knowing exactly what damage it would do. I saved my mother. I stopped a crime. I protected the vulnerable from the predatory. And I annihilated my brother in the process. Both things are true. Both things matter. And I'll spend the rest of my life figuring out how to live with that. If you're reading this because you're in a similar situation, because someone in your family is doing something unthinkable and you're trying to decide whether to blow it all up, I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I did, and that the aftermath is more complicated than any revenge story makes it seem. Protection and destruction. Justice and cruelty. Love and loss. They're not opposites. They're the same thing, viewed from different angles. Choose carefully. Live with the consequences. Hope you're strong enough to carry the weight of whatever comes next. That's all any of us can do. The rest is just survival. I thought that was the end of it. Really, I did. Craig had his consequences, Mom had her safety, and life was moving forward in that awkward, uncomfortable way it does after something breaks that can't be fully repaired. We were all learning to live with a new normal. Then I got the call from Dennis. It was a Thursday in June, one of those perfect early summer days when the air smells like cut grass and possibility. I was at my desk, reviewing structural plans for a new hospital wing, when my phone buzzed with his number. "You might want to sit down for this," he said without preamble. I was already sitting, but something in his voice made me straighten up. "What's going on?" "I got a call this morning from a woman named Patricia Vance. She's an attorney in Seattle. Apparently, your father had a safety deposit box at a bank out there, opened in 1987. The bank recently got acquired, and they've been doing an audit of old unclaimed boxes. Patricia's firm handles probate cases, and they've been trying to track down your family for 3 months. My father had been dead for 5 years. We'd settled his estate, distributed his assets, handled everything through his lawyer here in town. That doesn't make sense. Dad's estate was closed years ago." That's what I thought too. But this box wasn't in his will. It wasn't in any of his paperwork. It was opened under a different name, a business entity called Walsh Holdings LLC. Took them a while to connect it back to your father because the corporate registration had lapsed. Cold prickled down my spine. "What's in the box?" "Letters. A journal. Some financial documents." Dennis paused. "And evidence that your brother knew about it." The world tilted slightly. "What?" "Your father wrote a letter addressed to Craig specifically. Dated 2003. In it, he talks about the box, about what's inside, and about why he created it. Patricia sent me copies of everything. Jake, I think you need to see this in person." I left work early, told Sarah I'd explain later, and drove to Dennis's office in a daze. The whole way there, my mind was spinning through possibilities, none of them good. Dad had secrets. Craig had known about them. And somehow this connected to everything that happened. Dennis's office was in a converted brownstone downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs that smelled like old books. He had the documents spread across his desk, organized into neat stacks. When I walked in, he gestured to the chair across from him and handed me the letter. My father's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere, precise, engineer's lettering, the way he'd taught me to write dimensions on blueprints. "Craig," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've found what I hoped you wouldn't need to find." I read the whole thing twice, my hands shaking by the end. Then I read it a third time because my brain couldn't quite process what it was saying. My father had discovered something 20 years ago. A pattern of financial manipulation within his own company, a manufacturing firm he'd built from nothing over 30 years. His partner, a man named Richard Kelso, who I remembered vaguely from childhood company picnics, had been systematically embezzling money through fake vendor contracts and inflated invoices. Dad had figured it out but couldn't prove it without destroying the company and bankrupting dozens of families who depended on it for their livelihoods. So he'd made a deal. Richard would retire, sell his shares back to Dad at a loss, and leave quietly. In exchange, Dad wouldn't prosecute. But Dad wasn't stupid. He'd documented everything, every fake invoice, every suspicious transaction, every piece of evidence, and locked it in this safety deposit box as insurance. If Richard ever came back, ever tried to hurt the family or the business, the evidence would surface. The letter to Craig was dated 2 years before Dad sold the company and retired. It explained everything, told Craig where the box was and how to access it if needed, and made him promise never to tell Mom or the rest of us unless absolutely necessary. "Your mother's been through enough," Dad had written. "She doesn't need to know what I had to do to protect this family. But you're the oldest. You need to know in case Richard ever resurfaces." I looked up at Dennis. Why didn't Craig ever mention this? Keep reading. There were more documents. Bank statements showing that Craig had accessed the box 4 times over the past 7 years. The most recent visit was in September, 2 months before Thanksgiving. And there were copies of emails. Craig had reached out to Richard Kelso last year. Had contacted him through LinkedIn, of all places, and they'd been corresponding. The emails were friendly at first, catching up, talking about the old days. Then they shifted. Craig had tried to blackmail Richard. He'd told Richard about the evidence, about the box, about how he could make it all go public unless Richard paid him $200,000. Enough for a down payment on Craig's dream G-Wagon and then some. Richard had refused. Told Craig to go ahead, that the statute of limitations had long since expired, that he was an old man with nothing to lose. And then, and this was the part that made my blood run cold, Richard had counteroffered. He told Craig about Mom's house. About how valuable the property had become. About how much money Craig could get if he could just figure out a way to access that asset. Richard even suggested the power of attorney angle, the incompetency claim, the whole playbook that Craig had eventually followed. "Your brother didn't come up with that scheme on his own," Dennis said quietly. "He had a mentor. A man who'd spent years manipulating your father and got away with it." I felt sick. Actually physically sick, like I might throw up right there on Dennis's expensive carpet. "Does Mom know about any of this? About Richard?" "I doubt it. Your father kept it from her deliberately." "And Craig," I couldn't finish the sentence. "My brother hadn't just betrayed us on his own. He'd been guided into it, manipulated by a man who'd hurt our family decades ago. It didn't excuse what Craig had done. Nothing could excuse that. But it complicated the story in ways I wasn't prepared for." "There's more," Dennis said, and handed me another document. It was a photocopy of a journal entry, dated March of this year. Craig's handwriting this time, not Dad's. He'd apparently started keeping a journal as part of his court-mandated counseling. The entry was brutal in its honesty. Craig wrote about the shame, the regret, the way he'd convinced himself that manipulating Mom was justified because Richard had planted the seed. He wrote about how he'd been drowning in debt from a failed investment property, how desperate he'd felt, how Richard's suggestions had seemed like a lifeline instead of the poison they actually were. "I became exactly what I despised," Craig had written. "The man who hurt my father found a way to hurt my mother through me. And I let him. I didn't just let him, I embraced it. I'm not sure I can ever forgive myself for that." The entry went on, detailing Craig's attempts to track down Richard after the plea deal, to confront him, to make him understand the damage he'd caused. But Richard had disappeared. Moved out of state, changed his number, vanished like he'd never existed. "How did you get this?" I asked Dennis. "Patricia Vance sent it." Apparently, Craig had contacted her firm too, trying to access the safety deposit box again, wanting to see if there was anything in Dad's documents that could help him find Richard. She saw the journal entry in his paperwork and thought you should know. I sat back, head spinning. Everything I thought I understood about the past 8 months had just shifted. Craig was still guilty. He'd still done terrible things. But he'd been manipulated, groomed almost, by someone with experience destroying our family. "What do I do with this?" I asked. Dennis shrugged. "That's up to you. You could tell Craig you know. You could try to track down Richard yourself. You could tell your mother everything and let her decide how to handle it. Or you could just let it go. The box is closed now. The evidence is catalogued. Richard's crimes are too old to prosecute anyway." I took copies of everything and drove home in silence. Sarah was in the nursery with Catherine when I got there, singing some lullaby while our daughter grabbed at the mobile above her crib. Normal life. Simple life. The life I'd fought so hard to protect. "Bad news?" Sarah asked when she saw my face. "Complicated news," I corrected, and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her hand absently stroking Catherine's back while I laid out the whole twisted story. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Are you going to tell Craig?" she finally asked. "I don't know. Part of me thinks he deserves to know that I know. That his confession wasn't as private as he thought. But another part thinks, what's the point? It doesn't change what happened. It changes why it happened, Sarah said. Context matters, Jake. Craig made his own choices, but he was being manipulated by someone who knew exactly which buttons to push. Your father protected this family from Richard once. Maybe it's your turn to finish the job. Richard's gone. Disappeared. Maybe. Or maybe he's still out there, still looking for ways to hurt your family. She looked down at Catherine. Someone who'd manipulate a grieving son into betraying his mother, that's not someone who just walks away. She was right. I knew she was right. But I was so tired of fighting, so tired of digging into family secrets and exposing painful truths. I wanted to just be done. But you don't get to be done when someone threatens your family. I'd learned that lesson already. I called Craig the next morning. First time I'd initiated contact since Thanksgiving. Jake? He sounded shocked. Is everything okay? Is it Mom? Mom's fine. We need to talk. In person. We met at the same park where we'd met in December, the neutral ground where we'd had our last real conversation. Summer had transformed it, the playground was full of kids now, their laughter cutting through the warm air, and the trees were heavy with green leaves. Craig looked better than he had in the winter. Still worn, still carrying the weight of everything, but there was color in his face again. He'd gotten a haircut. His shirt was pressed. Small signs that he was trying to put himself back together. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Just handed him the folder Dennis had given me. What's this? He asked. Dad's safety deposit box in Seattle. The letters. The evidence about Richard Kelso. Your journal entry from March. His face went white, that same bloodless shock from Thanksgiving dinner. How did you? The bank tracked me down. They found my information as next of kin when they were trying to settle Dad's estate connection to the box. They sent everything to Dennis. Craig opened the folder with shaking hands. Read the first page. The second. His eyes were moving fast, scanning, and I could see the exact moment he understood that I knew everything. Jake, he stopped. Started again. I was going to tell you. Eventually. When I figured out how to explain it without sounding like I was making excuses. Were you? I asked. Making excuses? No. Yes. I don't know. He closed the folder. Richard reached out to me 3 years ago. Right after my divorce. I was in a bad place financially, emotionally, everything. He said he'd known Dad, wanted to catch up. It felt good to talk to someone who remembered him, who could tell stories about the early days of the company. And then he started suggesting things. Not at first. At first, he was just there. Supportive. Understanding. Then he mentioned that he'd made some mistakes back in the day, that Dad had been too forgiving, that maybe I deserved to benefit from the family wealth more than I was. Craig's voice was getting quieter, and I had to lean forward to hear him over the playground noise. He made it sound so reasonable, Craig continued. Mom didn't need that big house. She'd be safer somewhere with supervision. The money could change my life. And Dad had forgiven Richard's debts, let him walk away clean, so why shouldn't I benefit from family resources too? He groomed you, I said flatly. I let him. That's the part that kills me, Jake. I knew something was wrong. I felt it. But I wanted what he was selling so badly that I ignored every warning sign. I became the villain in my own story and blamed everyone else for putting me there. Did you ever find him? After the plea deal? Craig shook his head. He vanished. Completely. His LinkedIn went dark, his phone was disconnected, his last known address was empty. It's like he was never real. He was real, I said. He stole from Dad for years. And when he couldn't steal anymore, he found a way to steal through you. I know. Believe me, I know. Craig looked at me directly for the first time since sitting down. What are you going to do with this information? That was the question, wasn't it? I had evidence of Richard's old crimes, proof of his manipulation of Craig, connections that could maybe, lead to finding him. But to what end? Revenge? Justice? Some twisted sense of finishing what Dad had started? I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to track him down, make him pay for what he did to you, to Mom, to Dad. But another part thinks that's just feeding the cycle. More revenge, more destruction, more of the same thing that almost destroyed our family already. For what it's worth, Craig said quietly, I don't think you should go after him. I think he wins if you do. He wants us fractured, fighting, destroying each other. That's his real victory, not the money he stole, but the damage that keeps spreading years after he's gone. I thought about that. About Richard Kelso, sitting somewhere far away, maybe laughing at how his seeds of manipulation had grown into this forest of pain. About whether confronting him would heal anything or just tear open old wounds that were finally starting to scar. I saw Mom yesterday, Craig said, changing the subject slightly. We had coffee. Second time this month. I know. She told me. It's hard. She's trying, and I'm trying, but there's this gap between us now that I don't know how to cross. Every time I look at her, I see the hurt I caused. And I think she sees the son who betrayed her. Give it time, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Do you think we'll ever, he gestured between us. Do you think we'll ever be brothers again? Real brothers, not just people who share DNA and a terrible history? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell him that of course we would, that time heals all wounds, that family is forever. But I'd learned this year that some damage goes bone deep. Some betrayals leave scars that never fully fade. I think we'll be something, I said carefully. Maybe not what we were. But something. We're already doing better than 6 months ago. True. 6 months ago, you wanted me in prison. 6 months ago, you deserved prison. He laughed, bitter and sharp. Yeah, I did. We sat in silence for a while, watching kids on the swings, listening to their uncomplicated joy. I thought about Catherine, about the family she'd grow up in, about whether she'd ever know this whole ugly story or if we'd managed to bury it deep enough that it couldn't hurt her. I'm not going after Richard, I finally decided. He's not worth it. The best revenge is living well, right? Mom's happy. You're rebuilding. I've got a daughter who'll never know what almost happened to her grandmother. That's winning. Craig nodded slowly. Thank you. For everything. For stopping me before I went too far. For not completely destroying me when you could have. For, his voice cracked slightly. For being the brother I should have been. I stood up, preparing to leave. But then something made me stop, some impulse I didn't fully understand. Hey, Craig? Yeah? We're having a cookout next weekend. Sarah's idea, celebrate Catherine's 6-month mark. Mom will be there. Beth and Marcus. Just family. I paused. You should come. If you want. His eyes widened. Are you serious? I wouldn't have offered if I wasn't. It's not forgiveness. Not yet. But it's a start. And if we're going to be something, we have to start somewhere. I'll be there, he said quickly. What should I bring? Just yourself. We've got the food covered. I walked away before I could change my mind, before doubt could creep in and make me take back the invitation. It felt risky and right in equal measure, like standing at the edge of something high and deciding to jump anyway. Sarah raised her eyebrows when I told her what I'd done. Really? She said. You invited him? I did. And if you think it's a terrible idea, I can uninvite him. She considered for a moment, then smiled slightly. No. I think it's maybe the first actually healthy decision anyone in your family has made in a year. It's messy and uncomfortable and probably too soon, but it's genuine. That counts for something. The cookout happened. Craig showed up early, visibly nervous, carrying flowers for Mom and a teddy bear for Catherine. Mom hugged him, tentatively, carefully, but she hugged him. Beth was frosty but civil. Marcus mostly ignored him, which was probably the best we could hope for. It was awkward. It was tense. There were long silences and stilted conversations and moments where you could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on all of us. But Catherine didn't know any of that. She just saw Uncle Craig for the first time, grabbed his finger with her tiny hand, and smiled. And something in my brother's face cracked open when she did, not the polished salesman mask, not the defensive walls, just raw emotion. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks like Dad. She has his chin, I agreed. I won't let her down, Craig said suddenly, fiercely. I know I let everyone else down, but I won't let her down. She'll know me as the uncle who shows up, who keeps promises, he stopped, overwhelmed. One day at a time, I said. That's all any of us can do. The sun set while we were all in the backyard, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. Mom was teaching Beth a new quilting pattern. Marcus was manning the grill. Sarah was showing Craig how to properly hold a baby. And I was standing there, watching it all, thinking about how strange and fragile and precious it is, this thing we call family. We're broken. All of us carry cracks and scars from this year. But maybe broken things can still work if you're careful with them, if you give them time and patience and the space to heal wrong but heal anyway. I don't have a perfect ending to give you. Craig and I aren't best friends. Mom and Craig still have a long road ahead. The damage Richard Kelso caused ripples through our relationships in ways we're still discovering. And some nights, I lie awake wondering if inviting Craig back into our lives was wisdom or weakness. But we're trying. That has to count for something. The envelope I slid across the table that Thanksgiving night destroyed one version of our family. But maybe, just maybe, it's letting us build a different one. More honest. More careful. More aware of how easily love can turn to hurt when we're not paying attention. Richard Kelso is still out there somewhere. Maybe he's manipulating another family, planting seeds of destruction in another son who's vulnerable and desperate. Maybe justice will catch up with him eventually, or maybe he'll die peacefully in his sleep having never paid for what he did. I've decided I don't care. He doesn't get any more of our energy, our time, our family. We're taking back what he tried to steal, not money or houses, but trust and connection and the possibility of redemption. That's the real revenge. Living well. Loving harder. Building something good from the wreckage. And watching Craig hold Catherine while she falls asleep on his shoulder, seeing how carefully he supports her head, how gently he rocks her, that's proof that people can change. Not completely. Not all at once. But enough. Maybe enough is all we ever get in this life. And maybe that's okay. Story 2. My mother-in-law grabbed my hand during Easter dinner, zooming in with her phone camera as she laughed. Look at this pathetic little ring, everyone. She could have married a doctor but settled for this instead. When I realized she was live streaming to her friends, she smirked and said, "Don't be sensitive, people should know what marrying down looks like." I just stared at my plate in silence. That was when my wife stood up, snatched her mother's phone, and said into the camera. 2 minutes later my mother-in-law was losing it. My wife said into the camera, "Hi everyone. Since mom is so eager to share family details publicly, let me tell you about the second mortgage she took out last year to fund her lifestyle. The one my husband has been helping her pay because she was about to lose the house." 2 minutes later my mother-in-law was losing it. The ham sat untouched in the center of the table. Patricia, my wife, held the phone steady, her voice calm in a way I'd never heard before. Cold, almost clinical. "That's right," she continued, addressing the camera like a news anchor. "This man you're all laughing at? He's been wiring $500 every month to keep your friend Barbara from becoming homeless. But please, continue enjoying the show." Barbara's face had gone from smug satisfaction to a shade of red I didn't know human skin could achieve. She lunged for the phone, but Patricia simply stepped back, still filming. "Give me that right now." "Why? You started this broadcast. I'm just adding context." Patricia's thumb moved across the screen. "Oh look, 73 viewers. That's more than usual, Mom. Your garden club friends really showed up today. I should probably explain how we got here. My name is Derek Matthews, and I've been married to Patricia Whitmore for 3 years. We met during a corporate training seminar. She was in marketing, I was in IT. The attraction wasn't immediate or explosive. It built slowly over terrible conference room coffee and shared eye rolls during PowerPoint presentations about synergy. Patricia's mother Barbara had been a problem from day one, though I didn't fully understand the extent until we got engaged. She'd raised Patricia as a single mother after her husband left when Patricia was 7. By all accounts, Barbara had done well for herself, worked her way up to regional manager at a pharmaceutical company, put Patricia through college, maintained the family home in a respectable suburb. But somewhere along the way, Barbara had developed specific ideas about what Patricia's life should look like. Those ideas involved medical school, which Patricia had no interest in. They involved a large wedding at the country club, which we couldn't afford and didn't want. Most importantly, they involved a husband who looked better on paper than I did. I'm not going to pretend I was Barbara's dream son-in-law. I worked in network security for a mid-sized insurance company. Decent job, decent salary, nothing glamorous. I drove a 7-year-old Honda. I wore the same 3 blazers in rotation. I'd grown up in a working-class family where my dad fixed cars and my mom worked retail. Patricia didn't care about any of that. But Barbara cared enough for both of them. The engagement ring had been a particular point of contention. I'd saved for 6 months to buy it, a simple white gold band with a 1/4-carat diamond. Nothing fancy, but I'd chosen it carefully, and Patricia loved it. Barbara's reaction when she first saw it was to go silent for a full 30 seconds before asking if the center stone was decorative glass. That should have been my warning. Easter dinner had been Barbara's idea. She'd insisted on hosting, claimed she wanted to start some new family traditions. Patricia had been hesitant, but her mother could be persuasive when she wanted something. So we'd driven the 40 minutes to Barbara's house, a colonial-style place with a manicured lawn and seasonal wreaths that changed with disturbing precision. Other guests included Barbara's sister Margaret, Margaret's husband Tom, and 2 of Barbara's friends from her book club, Linda and Susan. I'd met them all before at various obligatory gatherings. They were fine in small doses, though they had a tendency to discuss their children's accomplishments in exhausting detail. The dinner had started normally enough. We'd made small talk about the weather, about Margaret's son who'd just gotten promoted, about Susan's daughter's wedding venue. I'd helped Barbara bring dishes to the table, complimented the ham, asked Tom about his golf game. Then Barbara had pulled out her phone. She'd been doing this thing lately, live streaming random moments to her social media friends. Dinner preparations. Garden tours. Patricia said it had started after Barbara took some social media workshop at the library. She'd become obsessed with engagement metrics and viewer counts. Usually, it was harmless. Annoying, but harmless. This time was different. She'd started filming the table, narrating the dishes she'd prepared, zooming in on the centerpiece. Then her camera had drifted to Patricia's hand, and her tone had shifted. "And here's my daughter's engagement ring," she'd said, that false brightness creeping into her voice. "Isn't it quaint?" Patricia had frozen. I'd felt my stomach drop. Then Barbara had reached across the table and grabbed my hand, pulling it into frame next to Patricia's. "Look at this pathetic little ring, everyone. She could have married a doctor but settled for this instead." The comments had started rolling in immediately. I could see them on her screen, upside down from my angle. Laughing emojis. Shocked faces. Someone had typed, "OMG Barbara, you're so bad." My throat had gone tight. Margaret had looked away. Tom had suddenly become very interested in his dinner roll. Linda and Susan had exchanged glances, whether sympathetic or entertained, I couldn't tell. "Don't be sensitive," Barbara had said, still filming. "People should know what marrying down looks like." I'd stared at my plate. The floral pattern around the rim seemed to swim in my vision. Part of me wanted to stand up and leave. Part of me wanted to say something cutting. But mostly I just felt hollow. That's when Patricia had moved. Now, still broadcasting, she walked slowly around the table. Barbara had gone from red to almost purple. "Patricia and Whitmore, you stop this right now. It's Patricia Matthews now, actually. I took Derek's name because I wanted to. Another thing you pretended not to notice." She glanced at the phone screen. Comments are coming in fast. Linda wants to know if this is real. "Yes, Linda, it's very real." Susan is asking about the mortgage details. "It's a 15-year refinance at 6.2%, Susan. Mom took out $80,000 in equity to renovate the kitchen and pay for that trip to Italy last fall." "You have no right." "Oh, I have every right. You just humiliated my husband in front of your friends. What did you think would happen?" Barbara's hands were shaking. She turned to Margaret, desperate. "Make her stop." Margaret, to her credit, just shook her head. "You started this, Barb. You've been starting this for 3 years." Tom cleared his throat. "Maybe we should all just calm down." "I am calm," Patricia said. Her voice hadn't risen once. "I'm just providing the full picture. See, everyone watching this assumed they were seeing some gold digger marry down for love or desperation or whatever narrative Mom was selling. But Derek isn't the one living beyond his means. Derek isn't the one who got denied for a personal loan last month because his debt-to-income ratio is underwater. I hadn't known about the denied loan." Patricia caught my eye briefly, and something in her expression told me she'd only recently found out herself. "How dare you air our private business? Our private business. You literally just broadcast my marriage to 73 strangers." Patricia's composure finally cracked slightly. "You've been doing this for months, Mom." The little comments. The comparisons to Patricia Chan's husband, the cardiologist. The jokes about Derek's car. The way you pronounce network security like it's a disease. Barbara opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I never." "You did. You do. At my birthday dinner, you told everyone Derek couldn't make it because he was probably fixing someone's printer. He was actually in a meeting with state regulators about a data security protocol he designed. But you didn't ask. You never ask." The silence that followed was deafening. Linda and Susan looked like they wanted to melt into their chairs. Margaret had her hand over her mouth. Tom was staring at his lap. Patricia looked down at the phone. 91 viewers now. Someone named Cheryl wants to know if Derek actually helps with the mortgage. "Yes, Cheryl, he does. Every month for the past 14 months. Even when we were saving for our own house down payment. Even when his mother needed help with her medical bills after her hip surgery. He never complained once. He just said family helps family." She set the phone down on the table, screen up, still recording. Barbara stared at it like it was a live snake. "There you go, Mom. The truth is out there now. Your friends know that the daughter who married down is actually married to someone with more financial stability and basic human decency than you've shown in years. They also know that you're willing to publicly humiliate your own son-in-law to feel superior. So congratulations. You got your engagement. You got your viewers. I hope it was worth it." Patricia walked to the coat closet in the front hall. I heard hangers sliding. She returned with both our coats. "Derek, we're leaving." I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I managed. As I passed Barbara's chair, she reached out, grabbed my sleeve. "Derek, please." "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." The words came out quieter than I intended, but firm. "You've meant every dig, every comment, every comparison for 3 years. You meant this one too. You just didn't expect consequences." Her hand dropped. We left Barbara's house in silence. The phone was still streaming when we closed the door behind us. I could hear Barbara's voice rising as we walked to the car, whether talking to the camera or to her remaining guests, I couldn't tell. Patricia didn't speak until we were on the highway. She gripped the steering wheel, she'd driven, saying she knew the route better, and stared straight ahead. I'm sorry. For what? For not doing that sooner. For making you sit 3 years of that. For thinking I could manage her, or that she'd eventually come around, or that ignoring it was the path of least resistance. I reached over and put my hand on her knee. You stood up for me today. I should have stood up for you 3 years ago. The first time she made a comment about your job. Or your car. Or your family. Her voice cracked slightly. She made you feel small, and I let it happen because I didn't want to deal with the fallout. Patricia. No, let me finish. My mom has always been difficult. Growing up, it was just the two of us, and she worked constantly, and I learned early that the way to keep peace was to go along with what she wanted. When she didn't like my major, I considered switching. When she hated my haircut, I grew it out. When she started making comments about you, I told myself it was just her being protective. She merged into the exit lane, hands still tight on the wheel. But it wasn't protective. It was controlling. And cruel. And tonight, watching her grab your hand like that, seeing your face. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there and pretend this was normal or acceptable or something we just had to endure. We pulled into our apartment complex. Patricia parked but didn't move to get out. My dad left because he couldn't deal with her anymore. She tells this story about him abandoning us, but I was 7, and I remember the fights. I remember him begging her to go to counseling. I remember her throwing his things off the porch. He didn't just leave. She pushed him out and then rewrote the narrative. This was new information. Patricia rarely talked about her father. She does this thing where she decides what reality is, and then she makes everyone around her conform to it. If they don't, they're the problem. They're too sensitive. They can't take a joke. They're being difficult. Patricia finally turned to look at me. I learned that behavior from her. I've been doing it to you. Not as badly, but I've been doing it. Asking you to just get through one more dinner. One more holiday. Telling you she means well. You're not like her. I could be. That's what scares me. I saw it tonight, how easy it would have been to just laugh awkwardly and change the subject. To pull you aside later and say you know how she is. To make you swallow it again. We sat in the parking lot for a long time. Eventually, Patricia's phone started buzzing. Text messages, dozens of them. She glanced at the screen and turned it face down. We should go inside. Our apartment was small, 1 bedroom, galley kitchen, living room barely big enough for a couch and TV stand. We'd moved in together a year before the wedding, and neither of us had wanted to upgrade until we could save enough for a real down payment. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Patricia made tea. I changed out of my dress shirt. We ended up on the couch, her feet tucked under her, my arm around her shoulders. Your phone is still going off, I said. She picked it up, scrolled through notifications. Margaret says she's proud of me. Linda apologized for laughing at the ring comment. Susan wants to know if I'm okay. My mom has called 6 times and sent about 20 texts. She kept scrolling. Some of her other friends are messaging too. People I haven't heard from in years. What's your mom saying? Patricia opened the messages, read silently. Her jaw tightened. First she was angry. Then defensive. Now she's pivoting to hurt. She's saying I humiliated her, that I aired private family business, that I'm being vindictive and cruel. She set the phone down. Nothing about what she did. Nothing about grabbing your hand or the things she said. Just what I did to her. Are you going to respond? Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. The next morning, Patricia's phone was still lighting up periodically. She'd turned off most notifications, but calls from her mother kept coming through. After the 8th one, she blocked the number. Too far? She asked. It's temporary, right? Until I'm ready to talk. Which might be never. We spent the day cleaning the apartment, doing laundry, pretending everything was normal. But there was a tension in the air, an awareness that something had fundamentally shifted. Patricia kept checking her phone even though she claimed she didn't care. I caught myself replaying the dinner in my head, remembering the weight of Barbara's hand on mine, the bright cruelty in her voice. Monday morning came. I went to work, sat through a team meeting about server maintenance schedules, answered emails about password resets. Normal things. But I couldn't focus the way I usually did. My mind kept drifting back to Easter dinner. Patricia texted me around lunch, Aunt Margaret wants to meet for coffee. Should I go? I replied, do you want to? I think so. She's the only one who didn't look away. They met that afternoon. Patricia came home 2 hours later looking lighter somehow, less burdened. Margaret told me she's been watching Mom's behavior for years. She said after Uncle Paul died, she started wondering what kind of relationships she wanted to maintain, and why. She said life's too short to enable people who make you feel small. That's pretty direct for Margaret. I know. Apparently, she's been in therapy since Paul's heart attack. Working through a lot of family dynamic stuff. Patricia sat down next to me. She said Mom called her crying last night. Said I'd ruined her reputation, that her friends would never look at her the same way. What did Margaret say? That maybe that's a good thing. That maybe if Mom's friends know what she's really like, she'll have to actually change instead of just performing respectability. Patricia leaned against me. She also said the mortgage thing was worse than I knew. Mom's been hiding bills for over a year. The Italy trip wasn't the only thing. She bought a new car last summer, upgraded her phone, redid the master bathroom. All while making minimum payments on everything. How'd you find out about the payments we've been making? I check our account regularly. I saw the transfers. When I asked you about them, you said it was something you and Mom had worked out privately. She paused. I should have pushed harder. Asked more questions. But part of me didn't want to know. The week wore on. Patricia didn't unblock her mother's number. Barbara started texting Margaret, asking her to intervene. Margaret declined. Barbara showed up at Patricia's office on Wednesday. Patricia had security escort her out. Was that harsh? She asked me that evening. Was grabbing my hand on camera harsh? Fair point. By Friday, the story had apparently spread beyond Barbara's immediate social circle. Patricia got a message from an old college roommate asking if she'd seen the Easter dinner video. Someone had apparently downloaded and shared the live stream before Barbara deleted it. It's on Facebook now, Patricia said, scrolling. Someone posted it in a group for people with difficult in-laws. It's got 300 comments. How do you feel about that? She thought for a moment. Vindicated? Exposed? Both? She kept reading. Most people are supportive. A lot of good for you and your husband deserves better messages. Some people think I went too far. One person said I'm just as bad as my mother for airing her finances publicly. Are you? Maybe. I don't know. In the moment, it felt like the only way to make her understand. To make her feel what she was doing to you. Patricia set her phone down. But now I keep wondering if there was a better way. Something less nuclear. You tried better ways for 3 years. True. That weekend, Margaret called. Barbara had agreed to see a therapist, partly to deal with the trauma of being publicly humiliated by her daughter, according to her initial phrasing, but Margaret had convinced her to be more open-minded. She's still not taking responsibility, Margaret said over speakerphone. But it's a start. The therapist might help her see the patterns. Or she'll just find someone who'll validate her victim narrative, Patricia said. That's possible too. But I'm hopeful. The mortgage situation scared her. She realized she's in over her head financially and can't keep up appearances forever. That's reality intruding in a way she can't ignore. After Margaret hung up, Patricia looked at me. Do you want her to get better? To change? Honestly? I'm not sure. I know I should want that. It would be better for you, for any future relationship you have with her. But a big part of me just wants her out of our lives. That's fair. She hurt you repeatedly and I let it happen. You don't owe her forgiveness. What do you want? Patricia was quiet for a long time. I want my mom back. Not the person she's become, but the person I remember from childhood. The one who worked double shifts to keep me in decent clothes. Who taught me to stand up for myself, ironically. Who told me I could be anything. She wiped her eyes. But I don't think that person exists anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe she was always like this, and I just didn't see it because I was the daughter, not the daughter-in-law. You're allowed to grieve that. I know. I am. 3 weeks later, Patricia got an email from her mother. Not a text, an email. Formal and careful. Dear Patricia, it began. I have been thinking extensively about what happened at Easter dinner. My therapist has helped me understand that my behavior toward Derek has been inappropriate and hurtful. I recognize that I have made comments and comparisons that were unfair and diminishing. This stems from my own anxieties about your future and my tendency to express love through criticism, which I am working to change. Patricia read it aloud to me, her voice flat. The email continued, I understand that you are angry, and I accept that I may have damaged our relationship beyond repair. If you are willing to meet, I would like to apologize to both you and Derek in person. If you are not willing, I understand. I am working to be better regardless of whether you choose to forgive me. Your Aunt Margaret has been helpful in making me see how my actions have affected you both. I hope someday we can rebuild what I have broken. Love, Mom. Thoughts? Patricia asked. It sounds rehearsed. Like she wrote it in therapy. That's what I thought too. But maybe that's not bad? Maybe she needs someone to write the script until she can mean it herself? Maybe. Do you want to meet with her? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About sitting across from Barbara again. About hearing her apologize. About whether I could believe it. If you want to, I'll go. For you. But I'm not ready to trust her again. That's reasonable. We met Barbara at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our apartment and her house. She arrived early, already sitting at a corner table when we got there. She'd aged in the past month. New lines around her eyes. Her makeup wasn't as precise as usual. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat down. Patricia nodded. I didn't say anything. Barbara folded her hands on the table. "I've been working with Dr. Chen, my therapist, on understanding why I behaved the way I did. She's helped me see that I've been projecting my own failures onto your relationship. When David left, I told myself it was because he wasn't strong enough to handle a real partner. That I was too much woman for him, too successful, too demanding. But the truth is I pushed him away because I couldn't accept anything less than perfect." She looked at me directly. "I did the same thing to you, Derek. From the moment Patricia introduced us, I looked for flaws. I compared you to an impossible standard, some imaginary successful man who would validate my choices by validating my daughter. And when you didn't fit that image, I treated you like a failure. That was wrong. Deeply, profoundly wrong." The coffee shop hummed around us. Someone's phone rang. The espresso machine hissed. "I embarrassed you at Easter. I humiliated you on camera for entertainment. I made fun of your gift to my daughter, which was given with love and intention. I've spent 3 years making you feel unwelcome in your own family." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to hear me acknowledge what I did." Patricia's hand found mine under the table. "I'm also sorry to you, Patricia. I taught you that my approval was more important than your happiness. I made you feel like you had to choose between me and Derek, and then I punished you when you chose your marriage. That wasn't parenting. That was manipulation." She pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. "This is a check for every payment Derek made toward my mortgage. With interest. I've worked out a payment plan with the bank that doesn't involve you. I should never have accepted your help in the first place." Patricia picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "I'm also selling the house," Barbara continued. "It's too much space for one person, and I clearly can't afford the upkeep. I'm moving into a condo in Riverside. Smaller. More manageable. A fresh start." "You love that house," Patricia said. "I loved what it represented. Status. Success. Proof that I'd made it despite being a single mother. But it became a prison. Everything I did was about maintaining an image I couldn't afford, literally or emotionally." Barbara smiled sadly. "Margaret pointed out that I've been performing for an imaginary audience for years. The live stream was just making it literal." We talked for another hour. Barbara asked about my work, actually asked, with genuine interest. She apologized for specific comments, incidents I'd half forgotten but that had obviously stuck with her during therapy. She didn't make excuses, didn't try to explain away her behavior as maternal concern. When we left, she hugged Patricia carefully, like she was afraid of being rejected. Patricia hugged back, stiff but present. "Derek," Barbara said. "I know I can't undo what I've done. But I'm going to try to be better. Not for show. Not for my friends. For you and Patricia." "I appreciate that," I said. And I meant it, even if I wasn't sure I believed it yet. In the car, Patricia was quiet. "What are you thinking?" I asked. That she sounded sincere. That I want to believe her. That I'm afraid to hope because I've been disappointed so many times. She pulled out of the parking lot. Also that therapy might actually be working, which is weird to witness. "Do you want to give her another chance?" "I think I want to see if she can sustain it. The apology is good. The check is good. Selling the house shows she's serious. But the real test is whether she can maintain these changes over time, or if she'll slide back into old patterns once the crisis fades." Fair enough. Over the following months, Barbara did maintain it. She checked in occasionally, brief, respectful texts asking how we were doing. She didn't push for visits or try to force reconciliation. When she sold her house and moved to the condo, she invited us to see it but didn't guilt trip when we declined. Margaret reported that Barbara was still in therapy, attending weekly sessions. She'd also joined a financial planning group and was working on her debt. Small steps, but consistent ones. Patricia and I started couples counseling too, working through our own patterns. How she'd learned to appease instead of confront. How I'd learned to shrink myself to avoid conflict. We'd both brought baggage into the marriage, and Barbara's behavior had exposed fault lines we needed to address. Our therapist, Dr. Ramirez, was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who had a way of asking questions that made silence feel productive rather than uncomfortable. During our third session, she asked me something nobody had asked before. "Derek, when Barbara humiliated you at that dinner, you said nothing. You stared at your plate. Can you walk me through what you were feeling in that moment?" I shifted in my seat. Patricia reached for my hand. "Shame, I guess. Embarrassment. Those are valid feelings. But I'm curious about the decision to stay silent. Was that strategic, or was it something else?" The question sat in the air between us. I thought about that moment, about the floral pattern on Barbara's china, about the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I started, then stopped. I think I was trying to disappear. Like if I stayed quiet enough, the moment would pass and everyone would forget it happened. Has that strategy worked for you before? I thought about growing up, about my father's temper when work stressed him out, about my mother's anxiety when bills piled up. About learning early that the best way to survive tension was to make yourself small and wait for it to blow over. Yeah. Usually. But it didn't work this time. No. Because Patricia didn't let it pass. Dr. Ramirez turned to Patricia. What made this time different? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I saw his face. Derek has this thing he does when he's hurt, his jaw tenses and his eyes go flat, like he's pulling all his emotion inward. I've seen it before at family gatherings, at holidays, whenever my mom took a shot at him. And every time, I told myself he was fine, that he could handle it, that it wasn't that bad. But this time? This time I couldn't lie to myself anymore. She was broadcasting it. Making entertainment out of his humiliation. And I realized I'd been complicit in every moment that led to this one. Every time I'd laughed off her comments or changed the subject or asked Derek to just get through one more dinner, I was telling him that his dignity mattered less than my relationship with my mother. I squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Derek, how did you feel when Patricia stood up for you? Dr. Ramirez asked. Relieved. Vindicated. Also guilty, because I knew it was going to cost her. Cost her what? Her relationship with her mother. I knew Barbara wouldn't forgive that easily. Part of me had stayed quiet all those years because I didn't want Patricia to have to choose. But she did choose, Dr. Ramirez said gently. She chose you. How does that sit with you now? I had to think about it. It's complicated. I'm grateful, but I also worry that she'll resent me for it someday. That she'll look back and think I wasn't worth losing her mother over. Patricia made a small sound of protest, but Dr. Ramirez held up a hand. Let him finish. I come from nothing, compared to Patricia's family. Barbara was right about that part. I don't have the credentials or the connections or the earning potential of someone like this doctor she kept comparing me to. Patricia could have married someone who gave her an easier life. Instead, she married me, and now her relationship with her mother is broken. Some days I wonder if I'm worth that trade-off. The silence that followed felt enormous. Patricia was crying quietly, and I realized I was crying too. Derek, Patricia said, her voice shaking. You are worth it. You've always been worth it. The problem isn't that you're not enough. The problem is that I let my mother convince both of us that you weren't. We spent the rest of the session unpacking that. Dr. Ramirez helped us see how we'd been caught in a pattern, Patricia seeking her mother's approval by proxy through me trying to earn that approval by being invisible and uncomplaining. Neither strategy had worked because Barbara's issue wasn't really about me at all. It was about control, about maintaining a specific narrative about Patricia's life that validated Barbara's choices. Over the following weeks, we had harder conversations. About money and class and the invisible hierarchies we'd both internalized. About Patricia's guilt over her privileged upbringing and my defensiveness about mine. About the ways we'd been performing for an audience that didn't actually matter. One session, Dr. Ramirez asked Patricia about the livestream video, which was still circulating online despite Barbara having deleted the original. How do you feel about that? About your confrontation being public? Patricia considered it. Conflicted. Part of me is glad there's a record, that people saw what actually happened. But another part of me worries that I did to my mother what she did to Derek, humiliated her publicly for my own satisfaction. Do you think that's true? I don't know. I was angry. I wanted her to feel what Derek felt. But I also wanted her friends to know the truth, to stop enabling her behavior by laughing along with it. Those motivations aren't mutually exclusive, Dr. Ramirez said. You can have wanted both accountability and revenge. The question is whether you can live with the choice you made. I can, Patricia said after a pause. I don't regret it. But I wish I didn't have to make it at all. The counseling helped, but it didn't solve everything instantly. We still had arguments. We still fell into old patterns sometimes, Patricia trying to smooth things over, me withdrawing into silence. But we got better at catching ourselves, at naming what we were doing and choosing differently. 3 months after we started therapy, something happened at work that tested everything we'd learned. My company was hosting a regional IT security conference, and I'd been asked to present on a network defense protocol I'd developed. It was a big deal, the kind of thing that could lead to a promotion, maybe even open doors to better opportunities. Patricia took the day off to come watch my presentation. The conference center was downtown, sleek glass and modern furniture. My session was scheduled for 2 p.m. in one of the smaller breakout rooms. When I arrived to set up, about 30 people filtered in, more than I'd expected. I'd been nervous all morning, but once I started talking, the anxiety faded. This was my area. I knew this material inside and out. The presentation went smoothly. People asked good questions. A few attendees came up afterward to exchange business cards. Patricia was beaming when I found her in the hallway. You were amazing. I didn't understand half of it, but you clearly knew exactly what you were talking about. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't have missed it. We were headed toward the exit when someone called my name. I turned to see Richard Chen, a security consultant I'd met at a previous conference. He was walking with a woman I didn't recognize. Derek. Great presentation, man. Really innovative stuff with the layered authentication protocols. He turned to his companion. This is Dr. Melissa Wong. She's with the University Hospital's IT department. We shook hands. Dr. Wong was probably in her mid-30s, professional, friendly. I'm always looking for people with your skill set, she said. We're expanding our cybersecurity team. Would you be interested in hearing about opportunities? Before I could respond, another voice cut in. Derek Matthews? Is that really you? I turned. My stomach dropped. Barbara stood a few feet away, dressed in business casual, a conference lanyard around her neck. Next to her was a man in his 40s wearing a white coat over dress clothes, presumably a doctor attending the healthcare track of the conference. Barbara, I managed. I didn't know you'd be here. Pharmaceutical companies sponsor these events. I'm working our booth. Her eyes moved from me to Patricia to Dr. Wong, and something shifted in her expression. I see you're networking. Making connections. That's smart. The way she said it made my skin crawl. Patricia had gone rigid beside me. We were just leaving, Patricia said. Oh, don't leave on my account. Derek was just being offered a job, weren't you? Barbara smiled at Dr. Wong. He does good work. Very reliable. The word hung there, weighted with implications only Patricia and I could fully understand. Reliable. Steady. Nothing special. Dr. Wong looked confused by the tension. Well, I should get to my next session. Derek, here's my card. Give me a call if you're interested in talking. She left. Richard made some excuse and followed. The doctor with Barbara glanced between us and said something about checking his schedule. Barbara, Patricia, and I stood in an awkward triangle in the hallway. Conference attendees streamed past us. You did well up there, Barbara said, and she almost sounded sincere. I caught the last 10 minutes of your presentation. Very technical. Over my head, honestly. Thanks, I said, unsure where this was going. I mean it. I never really understood what you did. I made assumptions based on prejudice, if I'm being honest. She looked at Patricia. I didn't know you'd be here. Derek asked me to come watch his presentation. That's nice. Supportive. Barbara's fingers twisted the conference lanyard. I've been thinking about calling you. Margaret said you're doing well. That you're happy. We are, Patricia said, her voice neutral. Good. That's good. Barbara glanced around the hallway, clearly uncomfortable. I should get back to the booth. But Derek, genuinely, good presentation. You should be proud. She walked away before either of us could respond. Patricia and I stood there for a moment, processing. That was weird, she finally said. Yeah. Did she just compliment you? Actually compliment you? I think so. We left the conference center and sat in the car for a while, neither of us ready to drive yet. How do you feel about running into her? Patricia asked. Honestly? Kind of okay. She was awkward, but she wasn't mean. She acknowledged your presentation was good. That's more than she's done in 3 years. It's still weird. Seeing her trying to be different. Very weird. Patricia started the car. As we pulled out of the parking garage, she said, Dr. Wong seemed impressed with you. Are you going to call her? Maybe. Hospital networks are complex. It could be interesting work. Would the pay be better? Probably. But it's not just about money. It's about whether I want to make a move right now, whether the culture would be good, whether it's actually a better opportunity or just different. She smiled. Look at you, being all strategic about your career. I learned from the best. We drove home talking about possibilities. About what it might mean if I changed jobs, whether we could finally start thinking about the future we'd been putting on hold. A bigger place. Maybe kids eventually. The kinds of conversations we'd been afraid to have when Barbara's shadow loomed over everything. That night, I called Dr. Wong. We set up an interview for the following week. The position was real, a senior security analyst role with better pay and more autonomy than my current job. I ended up taking it. The transition was smoother than I expected, and within a few months, I was earning nearly 40% more than I had at the insurance company. Patricia teased me about it. My mother spent 3 years making you feel inadequate about your career, and the whole time you were one job offer away from out-earning her. The irony isn't lost on me. 6 months after Easter dinner, Patricia accepted an invitation to lunch with her mother. Just the two of them. She came home cautiously optimistic. She's different. Not perfect, but different. She asked about my work presentation instead of comparing me to someone else. She showed me pictures of her condo without mentioning the house. She's seeing someone, a man from her book club, actually. Bob. I met him once at some function. He seems nice. How do you feel about that? Relieved? She's not making me her entire emotional support system anymore. She has her own life. 8 months after Easter dinner, Barbara came to our apartment for dinner. She brought flowers, complimented the space without qualification, and asked me detailed questions about a security project I've been working on. It was strange, surreal even, seeing this version of her. After she left, Patricia leaned against the closed door. I think my mom might actually be trying to change. Looks like it. It's disorienting. I spent so long being angry at who she was that I don't know how to be around who she's becoming. Give it time. You'll figure it out. A year after Easter dinner, we bought a house. Small, 2-bedroom, needed work, but ours. Barbara contributed to the down payment, insisted on it, actually, as a way to make further amends. We accepted because Patricia's therapist said it might help Barbara feel like she was rebuilding the relationship through action. The housewarming was small. Margaret and Tom. A few friends from work. Patricia's college roommate. And Barbara, who arrived with Bob, a casserole, and new curtains for the kitchen that she'd asked about beforehand instead of just showing up with. To Derek and Patricia, Barbara said when we gathered in the living room, "May this house be filled with more love and patience than I showed you. And may you both build the life you want, not the one anyone else tries to design for you." We drank to that. It felt earned. Not perfect, not without history, but earned. Later, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up, Patricia found me in the kitchen. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "My mom spent years trying to make me into someone I wasn't. And I spent years being angry at her for it. But somewhere in all of this, I became someone I actually like. Someone who stands up for people she loves. Someone who doesn't perform for approval." She wrapped her arms around me. So maybe I should thank her. For being terrible enough that I had no choice but to figure out who I really was. That's generous. Or delusional. Hard to say. We finished the dishes together, working in the comfortable silence of people who'd weathered something difficult and come out intact. The house needed paint. The kitchen faucet leaked. The backyard was mostly weeds. But it was ours, built on choices we'd made together, defended together. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Barbara: "Thank you for letting me be part of yesterday. I know I don't deserve the grace you've both shown me. I'm working every day to become someone who does." I showed it to Patricia. "Baby steps," she said. "Baby steps," I agreed. But the truth was, they were more than baby steps. They were a complete recalibration of how we related to each other, to Barbara, and to the expectations we'd been carrying for years. 2 months after the housewarming, Patricia's company sent her to a conference in Denver. She'd be gone for 4 days. The night before she left, she seemed anxious. "What if something happens while I'm gone?" she asked, folding clothes into her suitcase. "Like what?" "I don't know. What if my mom backslides? What if she shows up here and says something awful to you when I'm not around to intervene?" "Patricia, I can handle your mother." "I know, but..." "No, really. I can handle her. You don't have to protect me anymore. You already did the hard part. You stood up when it mattered." I put my hands on her shoulders. "And honestly? I think Barbara knows that if she crosses that line again, she loses you for good. She's not going to risk it." Patricia left for Denver. While she was gone, Barbara did call me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Derek, hi. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Just finishing dinner." "What's up?" "I wanted to ask you something, and I thought it would be easier without Patricia there. Not because I'm trying to go behind her back, but because I want your honest answer without worrying about how she'll react." I waited. "Do you think I can actually change? Not just perform change, but fundamentally be different?" The question caught me off guard. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. "I think you're already different," I said carefully. "Whether it lasts, whether it becomes permanent, that's up to you. I'm terrified I'll slip back. That I'll say something cutting without thinking, or make a comparison, or judge you the way I used to. My therapist says it's normal to worry about that, but it doesn't feel normal. It feels like walking on ice." "Good. Good? You should be worried about it. The fact that you're aware of the pattern means you can catch yourself before you fall into it." The old Barbara wouldn't have even noticed the problem. She was quiet for a moment. I watched that video again. The Easter dinner one. Someone sent me the link. I think they wanted to hurt me, show me how many people had seen it. But I made myself watch the whole thing. "Why would you do that?" "Because I needed to see what you and Patricia saw. What everyone else saw. And Derek, I was horrible. The way I grabbed your hand, the mockery in my voice, the performance of it all. I keep thinking about how you must have felt, sitting there while I humiliated you to strangers for entertainment. It wasn't great, I admitted. I don't know how you forgive that. How either of you forgive it. We haven't. Not completely. But we're willing to let you earn it back. There's a difference. That's fair. More than fair. She paused. Patricia told me about your new job. Congratulations. I mean that sincerely. Thanks. I also need to tell you something. That doctor at the conference, the one I was with when we ran into you? He asked me out afterward. I turned him down. I wasn't sure what to say to that. I mention it because the old me would have said yes. Would have jumped at the chance to date someone with that kind of status. But the truth is, he was boring. Talked about himself constantly. Didn't ask me a single question about my life. And I realized I'd been chasing men like that for years, impressive on paper, empty in person. Meanwhile, I'd been treating you like you weren't good enough for my daughter when you're exactly the kind of partner anyone should hope for. My throat felt tight. Barbara, I appreciate. Let me finish. I'm not trying to butter you up or manipulate you into forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see what Patricia saw in you from the beginning. Your steadiness. Your integrity. The way you show up for people without making a production of it. Those aren't weaknesses. They're strengths I was too shallow to recognize. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. When Patricia called from Denver that night, I told her about the conversation. How do you feel about it? She asked. I don't know yet. It felt genuine, but I'm still cautious. Good. Cautious is healthy. She's trying, though. Really trying. She is. I can see it too, Patricia sighed. Part of me wants to just accept it and move on. But another part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe there is no other shoe. Maybe this is just what rebuilding looks like. Messy and uncertain and taking way longer than anyone wants it to. When did you get so wise? I married well. She laughed, and the sound of it made me miss her even though she'd only been gone a day. The months kept passing. Barbara stayed consistent, not perfect, but consistent. She went to therapy. She downsized her life. She built a relationship with Bob that seemed healthier than anything she'd had before. She sent texts that were supportive without being invasive. She gave us space without disappearing entirely. Patricia and I kept working on our own relationship too. We argued sometimes, usually about small things, whose turn it was to do the dishes, whether we could afford a vacation, how to spend our weekends. Normal couple stuff. But we learned how to fight fair, how to call time out when things got heated, how to apologize without deflecting. The house became a home. We painted the walls colors we actually liked. We planted a garden that mostly failed but taught us things. We hosted friends for dinner and game nights. We built a life that felt authentically ours, not a performance or a compromise. One evening, almost 18 months after Easter dinner, I found Patricia in the backyard staring at the sunset. I joined her on the porch steps. Penny, for your thoughts? I was thinking about that dinner. How different everything is now. Better different or just different? Better. Definitely better. I have my mother back, not the version I wanted her to be, but the version she's actually becoming. I have us, stronger than we were. I have myself, I guess. The version of me who doesn't need anyone's approval to know she made the right choice. She leaned against me, and we watched the sky turn from orange to pink to purple. Do you ever regret it? I asked. The confrontation, the way it all went down? No. I regret waiting so long. I regret all the times I should have stood up for you and didn't. But grabbing that phone and telling the truth? That I'd do again in a heartbeat, even knowing how hard it would be? Especially knowing that. Because the hard part was worth it. You were worth it. We were worth it. The sky darkened. Fireflies started appearing in the yard, little pulses of light in the gathering dusk. We sat there together, not needing to say anything else, just existing in the life we'd fought for and built together. And for now, for always, really, that was enough. Story 3. My parents packed their suitcases for my sister's Sweet 16 cruise vacation while I stood in the doorway, confused about why my bags weren't ready. My father tossed a stack of my sister's homework on the kitchen table and said, "Someone has to finish all of this or she'll fail the semester, consider it your contribution to her birthday." When I asked how long they'd be gone, my sister laughed and said, "Long enough for you to finally be useful for once." I didn't say a word. That was 8 days ago. When they returned home this morning, I was gone, and so was every photo of me in the house. I should probably back up. My name is Marcus, and I'm 17, well, I was 17 when this started. I'm 18 now, as of 3 days ago. My sister Haley just turned 16, which you already know because her birthday became the single most important event in our family's collective consciousness for the past 6 months. The cruise cost somewhere north of $12,000. I know because I heard my mother on the phone with my grandmother, defending the expense by saying Haley deserves something special after working so hard in school. Haley's GPA hovered around 2.1. Mine was 3.8, but we don't talk about that. The dynamic in my house had always been skewed, but it reached absurd levels sometime around Haley's freshman year. Before that, things were just subtly unfair. She got the bigger bedroom when we moved, her piano lessons continued while mine stopped due to budget constraints, her college fund received regular deposits while mine sat untouched. I noticed these things but convinced myself they were coincidental or that I was being oversensitive. Then Haley discovered she could weaponize her tears. The first time I watched it happen with full awareness, we were at dinner. She'd forgotten to study for a history exam, panicked the night before, and asked to borrow my laptop to access the study guides I'd made for the same class the previous year. I said sure, but I needed it back by 9 because I had an essay due. She agreed. At 10:30, I knocked on her door. She screamed at me to go away. At 11 o'clock, I knocked again. She emerged with red-rimmed eyes and told our parents I'd been harassing her all night while she was trying to study. Dad looked at me like I'd committed an unforgivable offense. Mom ushered Haley back to her room with soothing words. Nobody asked for my side. The laptop appeared on my desk the next afternoon with 3 new dents in the casing and a cracked screen. When I showed my parents, Haley cried and said I was trying to get her in trouble because I was jealous of her. Mom made me apologize to her for causing a scene. I learned to stay quiet after that. The pattern repeated with increasing frequency. Haley would create a problem, I'd be blamed for it or expected to fix it, and any protest on my part transformed me into the villain. My parents weren't stupid people. Dad worked as an accountant, Mom managed a dental office, but around Haley, their critical thinking dissolved. She'd perfected the art of playing victim, and they'd become devoted audience members. Which brings us to the cruise. 3 weeks before her birthday, my parents sat us both down for a family meeting. These meetings only happened when they'd already made a decision and wanted to pretend we had input. Dad explained they'd been planning something extraordinary for Haley's sweet 16. An 8-day Caribbean cruise, departing 2 days after her actual birthday. The whole family would go. I felt a flicker of something positive. A vacation sounded good. We hadn't taken a real trip together in years. Marcus will need to stay home, obviously, Mom added, as if this were the most natural conclusion in the world. Someone has to watch the house, and Haley specifically requested this be a special trip for just the 3 of us. The flicker died. Haley smiled at me, saccharine and triumphant. You understand, right? It's my birthday. I didn't argue. Experience had taught me that arguing only made things worse and changed nothing. I nodded, said I understood, and excused myself to my room. Behind me, I heard Mom tell Haley how mature she was being about including her brother in the planning process by telling him directly. The next 3 weeks crawled by. Haley's excitement filled every corner of the house. New clothes appeared daily. Mom took her for a spa day to prepare for all the photos. Dad bought an expensive underwater camera. Haley's friends came over constantly to squeal about how lucky she was, and she'd always make sure these conversations happened within my earshot. I just feel so blessed, she'd say, her voice dripping with performance. Some people don't get families that appreciate them like this. I spent most of that time applying for jobs. My birthday was coming up 3 days into their trip, and I decided I needed an escape plan. 18 meant legal independence. 18 meant I could open my own bank account without their names on it. 18 meant possibilities. The day before they left, I secured a position at a warehouse on the edge of town. Full-time hours, benefits after 90 days, and they needed someone to start immediately. I told my parents I'd found a part-time thing to keep busy while they were gone. They barely listened. Dad was busy checking luggage weight restrictions, and Mom was making sure Haley had packed enough sunscreen. Then came the morning of their departure. Their flight left at 6 a.m., which meant they were up at 4, dragging suitcases down the stairs and loading the car. I'd set my alarm to say goodbye, still clinging to some obsolete notion that this was what families did. I found Dad in the kitchen, checking his phone while Mom did a final sweep of Haley's room to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything crucial. "Morning," I said. He grunted acknowledgement. Haley thundered down the stairs, her energy impressive for someone awake at this hour. She wore a new outfit, something with designer labels that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She saw me and her expression soured, like I'd ruined something by existing in the kitchen. Then Dad picked up the stack of papers from the counter and dropped them in front of me. "Haley's homework needs to be done before we get back, or she'll fail 3 classes this semester," he said it casually, the way someone might mention taking out the trash. "Teachers agreed to accept it late since she's on a family trip, but it has to be turned in Monday morning. Consider it your contribution to her birthday." I stared at the pile. English essays. Algebra problem sets. A history project requiring actual research. Easily 30 hours of work, probably more given it was Haley's homework and she'd likely ignored all the preliminary assignments leading up to these. "You're joking," I said. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Dad's voice carried that edge that meant the conversation was over. "You're staying here rent-free, eating our food. This is a small thing we're asking. I have a job starting Monday, then you'd better manage your time well." Mom appeared with Haley's neck pillow and phone charger. "Marcus, don't make this difficult. It's already done. We've arranged it with her teachers. Just help your sister out for once." Haley leaned against the doorframe, examining her nails. "Consider it practice for having actual responsibilities. Most people your age have jobs and school. You just have a few assignments to complete." "These are your assignments," I said to her directly. "Your classes. Your grades." She shrugged. "And you're my brother. This is what family does." I looked at my parents, waiting for one of them to acknowledge how absurd this was. Neither did. They were already moving on, checking watches and calculating traffic times. The conversation had ended before it began. "How long will you be gone?" I asked. Haley's laugh was bright and cruel. "Long enough for you to finally be useful for once." They left 20 minutes later. No goodbyes beyond a distracted wave from Mom. The house settled into silence, and I stood in that kitchen looking at the stack of work that wasn't mine, feeling something shift in my chest. It wasn't anger exactly. Anger was too hot, too immediate. This was colder. Clearer. I picked up the homework and carried it to my room. Then I opened my laptop and started making lists. The warehouse job started Monday morning at 7. I'd be working 10-hour shifts, 4 days a week to start. The pay was decent, better than decent, actually, especially for someone with no experience. The manager, a guy named Ron who looked perpetually exhausted but smiled when he talked, had explained they were desperate for reliable workers. He'd hired me on the spot after a 15-minute interview. "You show up on time and work hard, you'll do fine here," he'd said. "We've got people who've been here 20 years. Good benefits, room for advancement. You planning to stick around?" I'd told him I was planning to stick around very much. Sunday, I woke up before dawn and started packing. Not everything, that would be too obvious if anyone happened to stop by, which they wouldn't, but still. I took clothes, my laptop, important documents I'd need. Birth certificate, social security card, school records. I've been collecting these over the past weeks, requesting duplicates from the school office by claiming I needed them for college applications. I packed my favorite books, the watch my grandfather gave me before he died, a photo album from before Haley was born when family pictures included me. Everything fit in 2 large duffel bags and a backpack. Looking at them lined up on my bed, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. 18 years of life reduced to 3 bags. But 3 bags I could carry myself, which felt important. The photos took longer. We had them everywhere, covering the hallway walls, clustered on the mantel, filling albums in the living room cabinet. I started systematically going through each one. Any photo containing me got removed from its frame. Some I kept. Most I didn't need, they were lies anyway, frozen moments of forced smiles hiding years of imbalance. But I kept the ones from before Haley was born. The ones where Mom and Dad looked at me like I mattered. The photo of my first day of kindergarten where Dad had taken off work to walk me to the bus stop. The picture of Mom teaching me to ride a bike, her face bright with pride. I kept those because they felt like archaeological evidence of an extinct civilization, proof that things had once been different. For every photo I removed, I left the frame. Empty frames on every wall. Gaps in albums where pictures had been. I wanted them to see exactly how many times they'd documented moments I was part of, and then I wanted them to see those moments erased. If I didn't matter enough to be included in family vacations, then I didn't need to be included in family memories. The day stretched out. I finished the photos, cleaned my room thoroughly, and left it impersonal as a hotel. Then I sat down with Haley's homework. I didn't destroy it or throw it away. That felt petty. Instead, I read through every assignment carefully. The English essays asked her to analyze themes in books she clearly hadn't read. The algebra problems required showing work for concepts she'd slept through. The history project expected research about the Cold War, complete with citations and analysis. I put everything back in a neat stack on the kitchen table with a sticky note on top. "Good luck, M." Then I waited for Monday. My birthday arrived without fanfare, which felt appropriate. I woke up at 5 a.m., showered, dressed in the work clothes I bought at a thrift store the previous week. I loaded my bags into my car, a 15-year-old sedan I'd bought myself 2 years ago with money from summer jobs. It ran poorly and looked worse, but the title had my name on it, which meant it was entirely mine. The warehouse was a 40-minute drive across town. I'd chosen it partially for the distance, far enough that randomly running into anyone I knew felt unlikely. The work was exactly what Ron had described, physical, repetitive, and straightforward. Unloading trucks, organizing inventory, scanning items. My body ached by the lunch break, but my mind felt quiet in a way it hadn't in years. Ron found me during my break. Forgot to get this from you earlier, emergency contact information. Company policy. I filled out the form, pausing at the contact section. I wrote down my grandmother's name and number. She lived 2 states away and we talked maybe twice a year, but she was the only family member who'd ever asked me direct questions about my life and waited for real answers. I'd called her the night before to explain I was moving out and starting a job, keeping details vague. She'd said, "About time, Marcus. You call if you need anything." No parents? Ron noticed the blank spaces. Complicated situation, I said. He nodded without pushing. Fair enough. You're an adult. None of my business unless you want it to be. That became the template for the next week. I showed up, worked hard, and kept to myself. A couple of coworkers tried making conversation. I was polite but distant. After a few days, they accepted I wasn't unfriendly, just private. The work exhausted me physically, which I appreciated. It left no energy for overthinking. I'd rented a room in a house 20 minutes from the warehouse. Found it on a community board posting, older woman named Patricia who owned a 3-bedroom place and rented 2 rooms to students and young workers. The rent was manageable with my new salary. My room was small, furnished simply with a bed, desk, and dresser. Patricia had shown me around with efficient kindness, explained house rules, and mentioned she'd lost her son in a car accident 5 years ago. Not looking to replace him, she'd said plainly. But I like having people around. House is too quiet otherwise. You keep your space clean, respect quiet hours, and we'll get along fine. I paid first month's rent and deposit in cash I'd been saving for 2 years. Money from birthday gifts, summer jobs, the occasional odd task for neighbors. I'd been preparing to leave without knowing I was preparing. Some part of me had been packing emergency supplies for years. The days blurred together. Work, home, sleep. I bought groceries, cooked simple meals, and fell into a routine that felt surreal in its normalcy. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody needed me to fix their problems or absorb blame for their mistakes. The silence in my rented room was clean, uncomplicated by resentment or manipulation. I didn't contact my parents. They didn't contact me either, which stung less than I'd expected. I'd imagined some part of them might notice I hadn't called, might wonder if I was okay. But they were on a cruise celebrating Haley's birthday, and I was the ghost they'd left behind to handle inconvenient realities. On day 6 of their trip, I went back to the house one final time. I still had my key. The place felt different, not like home, like a museum of someone else's life. I did one last walkthrough, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. In my old room, I left behind clothes that didn't fit, books I'd never liked, and all the participation trophies from activities my parents had signed me up for then stopped attending. I took one last thing, the family calendar hanging in the kitchen. Mom meticulously documented everything on it, doctor appointments, school events, work schedules. I flipped through the months. Haley's activities were color-coded in purple. Parent-teacher conferences for her, dentist appointments for her, her friends' birthday parties. My college application deadlines appeared in pencil, easy to erase. My actual birthday wasn't marked at all. I left the calendar on the kitchen table, open to this month. Used a red marker to circle today's date and wrote in my neat handwriting, Marcus turns 18. Then I locked the door behind me and drove back to Patricia's house. The next 2 days passed quietly. I worked, came home, and tried to imagine what would happen when they returned. Would they call the police? Would they worry? Part of me hoped they would. A larger part suspected they'd be angry I hadn't completed Haley's homework, and my absence would register as inconvenience rather than concern. On the 8th day, I woke early despite having the day off. Something felt different, though I couldn't name what. I made coffee in Patricia's kitchen. She was already up, reading the newspaper at the table. "You seem calmer," she observed. "When you moved in, you were like a cat ready to bolt. Settling in okay?" "Better than okay," I said honestly. "Good. You've got mail, by the way. Came yesterday." She pushed a small stack across the table. Most of it was junk, but one envelope stood out. School letterhead. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet, my final transcript. I'd requested it weeks ago as part of my quiet preparation for leaving. The grades stared back at me, neat columns of A's and B's. Proof I'd worked hard at something, even if nobody had been watching. Patricia noticed my expression. "Good news?" "Evidence," I said. "That I existed." She gave me a long, evaluating look but didn't pry. I appreciated that about her, she understood the difference between curiosity and invasion. My phone rang around 10. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Marcus? This is Mr. Henderson from school. Haley's guidance counselor." My stomach dropped. "I need to talk to you about your sister's academic situation. Her teachers contacted me this morning about missing assignments." Apparently, there was an arrangement for her to submit work late, but nothing was turned in. Do you know anything about this? She went on a cruise for her birthday. Her homework was her responsibility. Your parents told her teachers you'd agreed to help complete the assignments while the family was traveling. My parents told the teachers that. Nobody asked me. I have a job. I didn't agree to anything. Silence stretched out. Then, I see. This is complicated. Haley's currently failing 3 classes. Without those assignments, she won't pass the semester. Is there any way? No, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. I'm not doing my sister's homework. She had all semester to complete it herself. Marcus, I understand you might be upset about being left behind on the family trip, but I'm not upset. I'm done. Those are different things. Where are you right now? Your parents have been trying to reach you. Have they? It wasn't a question. They're worried. They came home this morning and you weren't there. Your room is empty. They think something might have happened. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Something did happen. I turned 18 and moved out. I'm employed, I'm housed, and I'm fine. You can tell them that if they ask. Marcus, is there anything else school-related you need from me, Mr. Henderson? Because if not, I have errands to run. Another pause. No. Nothing else. But Marcus? Whatever's going on with your family, I hope you're making decisions you won't regret. I'm making decisions I should have made a long time ago. Thanks for calling. I hung up and stared at my phone. It rang again immediately, Mom's number. I declined the call. It rang again. Dad's number. Declined. Then a text from Haley, where are you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. I blocked all 3 numbers and set my phone to do not disturb. The calls kept coming throughout the day, filtered to voicemail I didn't check. I went about my errands, grocery shopping, picking up some books from the library, getting an oil change for my car, normal things that felt revolutionary in their ordinariness. Nobody was yelling. Nobody needed anything from me. I existed as myself, not as an extension of someone else's needs. That evening, Patricia knocked on my door. You've got visitors. Your parents, I assume? They seem agitated. My heart rate spiked. Did you tell them I live here? Told them I had a tenant named Marcus but wasn't in the habit of discussing my tenant's business with strangers. They're insistent, though. Might want to handle it before they make a scene. I followed her downstairs. Through the front window, I could see my parents' car in the driveway. Dad paced the front lawn. Mom sat in the passenger seat, her phone pressed to her ear. Haley slumped in the back, scrolling through her phone. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Patricia stayed inside but within sight, her presence a quiet support. Dad spotted me and his expression cycled through relief, anger, and confusion. Marcus. What the heck is going on? I moved out. We can see that. Why? We've been looking for you all day. Your room is empty, your things are gone, and you're not answering your phone. I'm 18. I don't need permission to move out. Mom climbed out of the car and hurried over. Marcus, honey, if this is about the cruise, we can talk about it. You're upset, I understand, but running away, I didn't run away. I moved out. There's a difference. I have a job, I'm paying rent, and I'm managing fine. You can't just leave, Dad said, his voice rising. You're still in high school. You have responsibilities. Haley's homework isn't my responsibility. My education is my responsibility, which I've handled just fine on my own. This is ridiculous, Haley called from the car, not bothering to get out. You're throwing a tantrum because you didn't get to go on vacation. Grow up. Something in my chest tightened, then released. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm establishing boundaries. You all made it clear where I stand in this family. I'm just accepting that reality and acting accordingly. Where you stand. Mom's voice cracked. You're our son. Of course you matter to us. Do I? Because I've spent the last few years feeling like an inconvenience you tolerated. The cruise was just the clearest example of a pattern I've been ignoring. Haley gets everything. I get whatever's left over, which is usually nothing. So I've removed myself from the equation. Everyone's happier this way. That's not fair, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. We've provided for you. Roof over your head, food, everything you need, basic legal requirements for a minor. You've done the minimum. Congratulations. Marcus. Mom reached toward me, but I stepped back. Please come home. We can work this out. As a family. A family that took a $12,000 vacation and left me home to do Haley's homework? A family that forgot my 18th birthday completely? A family that only noticed I was gone because Haley's academic consequences became inconvenient? I shook my head. I'm good where I am. You took down all the photos, Mom said suddenly. Every single one. Why would you do that? I removed the ones with me in them. If I'm not important enough to be part of family experiences, I don't need to be part of family memories. Seemed logical. Haley finally emerged from the car, her face flushed. You're being so dramatic. Everyone's treating you like you're the victim here when really you're just selfish. I needed help and you refused because you were mad about a stupid vacation. You needed help passing classes you didn't do the work for all semester. That's not my problem to solve. You're 16, figure it out. I'm going to fail. Her voice hit that pitch that usually preceded tears. Then you'll fail. Actions have consequences. Maybe this is a good learning experience. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. In the hierarchy of our family, I'd never directly refused her anything. I'd absorbed, accommodated, and disappeared myself to make room for her needs. This version of me, the one who said no and meant it, didn't compute. You can't do this, Dad said. You're coming home. Tonight. I'm 18. You can't make me. We're your parents. You think you can just walk away from your family? You walked away first. You've been walking away from me for years. I'm just making it official. Patricia chose that moment to step onto the porch. Folks, I think this conversation has run its course. Marcus is my tenant. He pays his rent on time and causes no problems. If you're not planning to physically drag him off my property, which I'd advise against, then I suggest you leave. Dad looked at her, then at me. This isn't over. Yeah, I said. It is. They left, but not easily. More arguing, more attempts to guilt or command me back. Haley cried, which felt performative even from a distance. Mom made increasingly desperate appeals. Dad oscillated between anger and awkward attempts at reasoning. But eventually, they drove away. I stood on Patricia's porch long after their taillights disappeared, feeling hollowed out and strangely light. You okay? Patricia asked. I don't know yet. That's honest. Come inside. I made soup. The next few days brought more contact attempts. Voicemails I didn't listen to. Texts to my blocked numbers that I only knew about because Mr. Henderson called again to say my parents had contacted the school asking for help locating me. I told him, politely but firmly, that I was safe, employed, and didn't wish to be contacted by my family. He said he'd document the conversation and respect my boundaries. Haley's academic situation deteriorated rapidly. Through the grapevine at school, I still went, determined to finish my senior year strong. I heard she'd been placed on academic probation. My parents had tried arguing with teachers and administration about the late work arrangement, but without the completed assignments, there was nothing to submit. The teachers, frustrated with months of Haley's poor performance and my parents' enabling, held firm. I felt no satisfaction in this. It wasn't about punishing Haley. It was about refusing to be responsible for consequences I hadn't created. She'd had all semester to do her work. My parents had had her entire life to teach her accountability. Their failure wasn't mine to remedy. Work became my anchor. Ron noticed I was reliable and started giving me more responsibility. Training on new equipment, occasionally leading small teams for specific projects. The physical exhaustion translated to dreamless sleep. The routine provided structure. My coworkers became acquaintances, then something approaching friends. I started joining them for lunch breaks, listening to their stories about kids and mortgages and weekend plans. One guy, Dennis, was maybe 40, with a wife and 3 teenage daughters. He cornered me one day during break. Ron mentioned you're living on your own. Family stuff? Something like that. None of my business, but if you need anything, someone to list as a reference, help moving furniture, whatever, let me know. 18's young to be completely solo. I'm managing. Didn't say you weren't. Just saying you don't have to manage alone if you don't want to. These small kindnesses from near strangers meant more than I could articulate. People who owed me nothing offering basic human decency. It highlighted how conditional my parents' support had always been. 3 weeks after I left, my grandmother called. I'd unblocked her number specifically. Your mother phoned me, she said without preamble. Gave me quite an earful about your dramatic exit and how worried they are. Then she asked if I'd seen you. I told her I had not, which is technically true since we've only spoken by phone. Thanks for not telling them where I am. Marcus, I'm not going to pretend I understand the full situation, but I know my daughter. She's a good woman in many ways, but she's always struggled with fairness when it comes to her children. Haley is the baby, the girl, the one who needs more help, or so she's convinced herself. You've always been capable, so she assumed you'd be fine without attention. I'm fine now. Wasn't fine there. I believe it. Your mother loves you, but love isn't always distributed equally or wisely. If you need anything, money, advice, someone to talk to, you call me. Understood? Understood. And Marcus? Happy belated birthday. I mailed you a card, but I suspect it went to your old address. Thanks, Grandma. You're welcome. Don't be a stranger. School remained complicated. Teachers who knew my situation ranged from sympathetic to confused. A few tried mediating, suggesting family counseling or reconciliation. I appreciated the concern but declined. Some wounds weren't meant to heal. Some relationships weren't meant to be preserved. I was learning to accept this without guilt. Haley avoided me in the hallways. When we did cross paths, her expression mixed resentment with something that might have been fear. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the sibling she could manipulate or blame. I was someone who'd walked away, which made me unpredictable. My parents showed up at Patricia's house twice more. Both times, I refused to engage beyond confirming I was fine and asking them to leave. The second time, Dad tried a different approach, softer, almost pleading. I know we made mistakes. I see that now. But you're our son. We want you home. You want things to go back to how they were. I don't. We want different things. What do you want from us? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? An apology? Changed behavior? Acknowledgement of years of imbalance? All of it felt impossible and insufficient simultaneously. I want you to respect my decision to live separately. I want you to stop treating my boundaries as negotiable. Beyond that, I don't know yet. Can we at least talk? Really talk, not like this. Maybe eventually. Not now. They left again, and I felt the weight of that conversation for days. Because part of me did want what Dad offered, connection, understanding, repair. But I'd learned wanting something didn't make it feasible or healthy. Some damage went too deep for quick fixes. Graduation approached. I'd applied to colleges during my senior year, before everything imploded. Acceptance letters arrived at Patricia's address. I'd updated my information with admissions offices. State schools, mostly, places with decent programs and reasonable costs. I had scholarship offers based on my grades and a surprisingly strong essay about overcoming family challenges without directly naming them. I chose a university 4 hours away. Far enough for genuine separation, close enough to drive if needed. The scholarship covered tuition. I'd work summers to handle living expenses. Financial aid would fill the gaps. I'd manage. Sending in my enrollment deposit felt like closing one door and opening another. I was building something new, something mine. The foundation was shaky, but it was mine to stabilize. 2 months after I'd left, Mr. Henderson called with unexpected news. Marcus, your parents have agreed to pay for your college. Full tuition, room and board, books, everything. They wanted me to relay this offer. Why are you telling me and not them? They thought it might be better received through a neutral third party. They're trying, Marcus. In their way. Their way involves using money as a proxy for actual relationship repair? I'm not defending their methods. Just delivering the message. Tell them, thanks, but I've already arranged my financing. I don't need their help. You're turning down a free college education? I'm turning down strings I can't see yet but know exist. I'd rather handle it myself. He sighed. You're more mature than most adults I know. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice for you. But Marcus? Don't close the door completely. People can change. Sometimes they need space to do it. I'm giving them space. And myself. Fair enough. Good luck at state. You'll do well. Summer arrived, and I increased my hours at the warehouse to save aggressively. Ron promoted me to shift supervisor, which came with a raise and more responsibility. I worked 50-hour weeks, came home exhausted, and loved it. The money accumulated. My independence solidified. Patricia and I developed an easy rhythm. She'd cook dinner sometimes and invite me to join her. We'd eat and talk about nothing consequential, the weather, local news, her garden. She told stories about her son, keeping his memory alive through casual mention. I listened and learned that grief didn't have to be dramatic to be profound. One evening, she asked about my plans after summer ended. College. State University. Moving into the dorms in August. You'll do well there. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Thanks. For everything. The room, the space, not asking too many questions. Everyone deserves a safe place to land when they're figuring things out. You've been a good tenant. Quiet, respectful, responsible. You're welcome back during breaks if you need somewhere to stay. I might take you up on that. I hope you do. July brought another unexpected development. Haley contacted me through a friend's phone number I hadn't blocked. Her text was short, "Can we talk?" Just us. Not about them. I debated ignoring it. Engaging felt risky. But curiosity won. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Patricia's house and our parents' place. Neutral territory. Haley arrived 10 minutes late, looking different somehow. Less polished. Her hair wasn't styled, and she wore jeans and a plain shirt instead of her usual carefully curated outfits. Thanks for coming, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What do you want to talk about? I failed 2 classes. Have to take summer school to stay on track for graduation. Mom and Dad are furious. Mostly at you, but also at me for putting them in this position. This is the part where I'm supposed to feel guilty? No. This is the part where I tell you I get it now. Kind of. I waited. They've been unbearable since you left. Everything I do gets compared to you. How you manage school and work. How you never needed help with homework. How you were responsible. It's like they're seeing you for the first time, which means they're seeing me clearly too, and they don't like what they see. And you want me to come back so things go back to normal? No. I want to apologize. For being horrible. For taking advantage of you. For acting like you didn't matter. She paused, stirring her untouched coffee. I knew what I was doing. Maybe not at first, but definitely by the time I was 14 or 15. I knew Mom and Dad favored me. I knew they'd take my side. I used it. I used you. Why? Because I could? Because it felt good to be the important one? I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and I understand why you left. Her apology felt genuine, which somehow made it harder to receive. Anger was easier than empathy. Okay. That's it? Okay? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we're good now? We're not. You spent years making my life smaller so yours could be bigger. An apology doesn't erase that. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it. We sat in silence for a while. The coffee shop hummed with other people's conversations, their lives continuing around our awkward détente. Finally, Haley spoke again. Are you really not coming back? No. I'm going to college in August. I'll probably see you at holidays eventually, but I'm not coming home. That place stopped being home a long time ago. What about Mom and Dad? What about them? They're miserable. They keep talking about how they failed you, how they should have seen things differently. Dad actually cried last week. I didn't know he could cry. They're feeling consequences too. Welcome to the club. You're really not going to give them another chance? Maybe someday. When I'm ready. When they've demonstrated actual change instead of just feeling bad. Right now, I need distance. She nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're braver than I'll ever be. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being invisible. Same thing sometimes. We didn't hug when we parted. Didn't make plans to meet again. But something shifted, not reconciliation, exactly, but acknowledgement. She'd taken responsibility, which was more than I'd expected. I told Patricia about the meeting that evening. She listened thoughtfully. Think you'll talk to her again? She asked. Maybe. If she initiates and shows consistent change. I'm not going to chase relationship repair with people who spent years teaching me I wasn't worth their effort. That's wise. Hard, but wise. The remaining weeks of summer passed quickly. I packed for college, said goodbye to coworkers who'd become friends, and prepared for the next chapter. Ron shook my hand on my last day and told me I had a job waiting if I wanted to work breaks. Dennis and a few others took me out for lunch, offering advice and encouragement. You're going to do great things, Dennis said. Just remember where you came from. Not your family stuff, I mean remember you survived that. You're stronger than you think. Moving day arrived hot and humid. Patricia helped me load my car, which now contained everything I owned, still just a few bags, plus some new necessities accumulated over the months. She pressed an envelope into my hands. Don't open it until you get there, she said. Just a little something to help you settle in. Patricia, I've already done what I wanted to do. Let an old woman feel useful. I hugged her, surprising us both. Thank you. For everything. You're welcome, Marcus. You've got my number. Use it. The drive to campus felt surreal. 4 hours of highway, rolling through landscapes that gradually flattened into the plains surrounding State University. I'd visited once for orientation, but this felt different. Permanent. Chosen. My dorm room was small and bare, shared with a roommate who wouldn't arrive until the next day. I unpacked slowly, arranging my few possessions to make the space feel inhabited. Then I remembered Patricia's envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a note in her careful handwriting, for emergencies, textbooks, or pizza at 2 a.m. when you're stressed about exams. You've earned the right to be a normal college student. Don't forget to enjoy some of it. Patricia. I sat on my new bed in my new room and my new life and cried for the first time since leaving home. Not from sadness, exactly. From relief. From gratitude. From the overwhelming realization that I'd actually done it. I'd walked away from a situation that diminished me and built something better. Orientation week introduced me to hundreds of new faces, new routines, new possibilities. I met people who knew nothing about my family situation, who saw me as a blank slate. I joined a study group. Attended campus events. Started to imagine a future unshackled from the past. 3 weeks into the semester, my grandmother called. How's college treating you? Really well, actually. Classes are challenging but manageable. I like my roommate. Things are good. I'm glad to hear it. Listen, I talked to your mother yesterday. She asked about you. I told her you were doing fine and suggested she needed to respect your space. She didn't take it well, but she's thinking about what I said. Okay, Marcus, I'm not pushing you to reconnect before you're ready. But eventually, if you can, consider it. Not for them, for you. Carrying that kind of anger and hurt long term will eat at you. When you're ready, on your terms, maybe leave the door cracked open. Maybe. That's all I'm asking. Meanwhile, keep being you. You're doing something remarkable, building a life from scratch at 18. I'm proud of you. Those words landed differently than they would have from my parents. My grandmother's pride was earned through observation, not biological obligation. She'd seen me make hard choices and respected them. Thanks, Grandma. That means a lot. You're welcome. Now go study or socialize or whatever college students do. I'll call you next month. The semester unfolded in a rhythm of classes, studying, and slowly learning to be a person independent of my family's dysfunction. I worked part-time at the campus library to supplement my finances. Made friends with people in my major. Joined a club focused on community service, finding satisfaction in helping others navigate challenges. My roommate, a guy named Tyler from a small town upstate, became a steady presence. We weren't best friends, but we cohabitated well. One night, over cheap takeout, he asked about my family. You never mentioned them. Everything okay? Complicated, I said. We're not in contact right now. By choice? Mine. That's rough. But sometimes necessary. My older brother cut off our dad a few years ago. Dad was a mean drinker. My brother stayed gone until Dad got sober and stayed that way for a year. They're rebuilding now, but it took time and real change. Did it work? The rebuilding? Mostly. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. I guess the point is, sometimes distance is what it takes for people to see clearly. Doesn't mean you owe them reconciliation, though. Just means it's possible if everyone involved actually does the work. That's the question, whether they'll do the work or just want me to come back so things feel normal again. Yeah. Big difference between those two things. Thanksgiving approached, and I dreaded the question everyone asked, what are you doing for break? I'd made plans to stay on campus, working extra library hours and enjoying the quiet. Patricia had invited me to visit, which I planned to do for a few days. But 2 weeks before the holiday, I received a letter. Actual postal mail, handwritten. My mother's handwriting. I stared at it for a day before opening it. When I finally did, the letter was 3 pages long, front and back. Her handwriting was careful, like she'd drafted it multiple times. Marcus, it began. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I have the right to ask you to. But I need to try. She detailed memories I'd forgotten, moments of my childhood when she'd been present, attentive, proud. Then she acknowledged when things changed, how Haley's needs seemed more urgent, more immediate. How she'd convinced herself I was fine because I never complained. How that narrative became a convenient excuse to overlook imbalance. I see it now, she wrote. How we made you responsible for problems you didn't create. How we celebrated Haley's achievements while taking yours for granted. How we built a family structure that prioritized her comfort over your well-being. I don't have an excuse that makes this okay. I can only tell you I'm sorry and I'm trying to understand how we got here. She didn't ask me to come home. Didn't plead or guilt. Just apologized and said she understood if I never wanted a relationship with them again. She included her new cell phone number, not the family plan, her own separate line, and said I could contact her there if and when I was ready. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Didn't respond immediately. Needed time to process whether the apology felt genuine or strategic. A week later, another letter arrived. This one from my father. His was shorter, more stilted. Dad had never been comfortable with emotional expression. But he tried. I thought I was teaching you independence by expecting you to handle things on your own. I thought I was preparing you for life. I was wrong. I was taking the easy path and calling it parenting. You deserved better. You deserved equal attention, celebration, and support. I'm sorry I didn't give you that. He didn't ask for anything either. Just apologized and said he respected my decision to create distance. I showed both letters to Tyler, who read them carefully. They sound sincere, he said. But sincerity isn't the same as change. Actions matter more than words. That's what I keep thinking. But part of me wants to believe them. Then maybe give them a chance to prove it. Not by going home or resuming regular contact, but by watching from a distance. See if they maintain this energy or if it fades when you don't immediately respond. It was good advice. I didn't respond to either letter but kept them. Evidence of something, an attempt, at least. December arrived with finals and snow. I threw myself into exams, grateful for the distraction. My grades were strong, which felt validating. I was succeeding on my own terms, in an environment where my efforts were recognized. Christmas break approached, and I made plans to spend it with Patricia. She'd invited me enthusiastically, and the idea of her quiet house felt far more appealing than any alternative. But 3 days before I was scheduled to drive to her place, Haley called. I'd never blocked her new number, mostly out of curiosity. "Hey," she said when I answered. "I know you're probably busy with finals and stuff, but I wanted to ask you something." "I'm listening." "Would you consider coming to dinner?" "Just dinner, one evening during break. At a restaurant, not at home. Me, you, Mom, and Dad. Neutral territory. We could just talk. Civilly." "Why?" "Because we all need to start somewhere. The letters were a start, but they're one way. This would be two-way. Or four-way, I guess. I don't know if I'm ready for that." "I get it. But think about it. I know we don't deserve another chance. I know we need to prove we're different. This is me asking for an opportunity to start proving it. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Thanks, Marcus." She hung up, and I sat with the request for hours. Part of me wanted to refuse immediately, maintain boundaries, protect myself, avoid potential disappointment. But another part acknowledged the courage it took for her to call. The consistency of her changed behavior. The fact that my parents had written letters without demanding responses. I called Patricia. "Hypothetically," I said, "if people who hurt you made efforts to apologize and change, at what point do you give them a chance to prove it?" "Hypothetically," she replied, "you give them that chance when you're ready, not when they are. And you give it in small doses. One dinner doesn't mean you're obligated to weekly calls or holiday visits. It's just one dinner. You can always walk away again if needed." "So you think I should do it?" "I think you should do what feels right for you. But I also think avoiding something out of fear isn't quite the same as avoiding something because it's unhealthy. Figure out which one this is." I thought about it for another day. Then I called Haley back. "One dinner," I said. "Public place. 2 hours maximum. I'm not committing to anything beyond that." "Thank you," she said, and she sounded genuinely relieved. "I'll set it up and text you details." The dinner happened 3 days after Christmas at a mid-range restaurant attached to a hotel. I arrived first, deliberately. Wanted the choice of seat, the control of being the one others approached rather than the one approaching. They arrived together, looking nervous. Mom had new glasses and less makeup than I remembered her wearing. Dad had gone gray at the temples. Haley wore a simple sweater and jeans, nothing flashy. They sat down carefully, like they were afraid sudden movements might spook me. For a few minutes, we just looked at menus and ordered drinks. The silence felt heavy but not hostile. Dad spoke first. "Thank you for agreeing to this." "I haven't agreed to anything except dinner," I said. "This isn't reconciliation. It's conversation." "We understand," Mom said quickly. "We just want to talk. To listen, really. If you're willing to let us." I studied them, looking for performance, for manipulation. Saw only discomfort and genuine contrition. It didn't erase the past, but it was something. "Okay. So talk." They didn't bombard me with excuses or justifications. Instead, they asked questions. How was school? Where was I living? What was I studying? They listened to my answers without interrupting or trying to insert themselves into my narrative. Haley asked about my roommate, my classes, whether I'd made friends. The questions felt stiff but earnest, like she'd rehearsed. When the food came, Mom said quietly, "We've been going to family therapy. The three of us. And individually. The therapist helped us see patterns we'd been blind to. It's been difficult but necessary." "Good for you," I said, and meant it without sarcasm. "That takes work." "We should have done it years ago," Dad added. "Before it got to the point of you having to leave. We failed you, Marcus. We're trying to understand why and how to be better." Being better means respecting my boundaries. Not just now, but ongoing. It means accepting I might never want the kind of family closeness you picture. It means proving through actions, not words, that you've changed. "We know," Haley said. "That's what we're trying to do. Starting with respecting you enough to not demand forgiveness or immediate trust." The dinner lasted exactly 2 hours. We talked about neutral topics mostly, with occasional ventures into heavier territory. They didn't ask when I'd visit home. Didn't pressure me to attend future holidays. Didn't try to buy my affection with offers of money or gifts. When we parted in the parking lot, Mom hugged me briefly. Dad shook my hand. Haley gave me a small wave. Then they drove away, and I sat in my car processing what had happened. It wasn't healing. It wasn't resolution. But it was different from before, which counted for something. I drove to Patricia's house and told her about the dinner. She listened thoughtfully. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Uncertain. Cautiously hopeful. Still guarded." All reasonable reactions. Keep being uncertain and guarded. Hope is fine, but let them earn your trust slowly. I spent the rest of break with Patricia, working at a temporary job Ron had arranged at the warehouse, and preparing for spring semester. The dinner with my family became a data point rather than a turning point, something to consider as part of a larger pattern I need to observe over time. They sent occasional texts, brief and respectful. Updates on mundane things, never demanding responses. I replied sometimes, keeping my messages equally brief. Baby steps towards something that might eventually resemble a functional relationship. College resumed, and life continued in its new rhythm. I declared my major, made plans for summer internships, started thinking about post-graduation possibilities. My world expanded beyond the narrow confines of my childhood home's dysfunction. I don't know if my family will ever fully understand what they did or how deeply it affected me. I don't know if we'll rebuild anything resembling a close relationship. But I know I survived. I know I chose myself when nobody else would. I know I'm building a life that's mine, uncompromised by others' expectations or manipulations. Last week, I got another letter from Mom. Inside was a single photo, me as a child, maybe 7 years old, grinning at the camera while holding a ridiculously large ice cream cone. On the back, she'd written, "Found this while organizing photos. Wanted you to have it. We're sorry we made you feel like you had to remove yourself from our memories to be seen." I put the photo on my desk, next to my college ID and a picture of Patricia in her garden. Different pieces of my life, existing together without conflict. I don't know what comes next. The story isn't over, it's just different now. I'm different now. The scared, invisible 17-year-old who stood in the kitchen while his family packed for a vacation without him doesn't exist anymore. In his place is someone who knows his worth, who maintains his boundaries, who understands that sometimes walking away is the bravest and healthiest choice. My parents packed their suitcases for my sister's sweet 16 while I stood in the doorway, confused about why my bags weren't ready. 8 days later, I was gone and every photo of me had disappeared from their walls. It was the end of one story and the beginning of another. This is the other story. Mine. And I'm still writing it. Story 4.
My son and his fiancée send out elaborate save-the-dates for their dream destination wedding at their private beach house in Malibu, then called to tell me I was no longer invited because her parents are paying and don't want certain people there. When I asked about his sister and cousins who'd also been uninvited, he sighed and said, "Look, Mom, this is our day, not everything is about you." I just said, "I understand," and hung up. So, I rented it to someone else for their wedding weekend. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, one of those glossy digital save-the-dates that must have cost a fortune to design. Watercolor waves lapped at golden sand beneath elegant script announcing, "Tyler James Morrison and Madison Claire Rothschild request the honor of your presence at their seaside celebration." Below the romantic prose sat a photograph of the happy couple, barefoot and laughing on a sun-drenched deck, the Pacific Ocean glittering behind them. The location made my chest tighten, the Morrison Beach House, Malibu, California. My beach house. The one my late husband Richard and I had saved 15 years to buy. The one where Tyler had spent every summer of his childhood building sandcastles and learning to surf. The one I kept after Richard's death even when the property taxes made me dizzy, because it held every good memory our family had left. I forwarded the email to my daughter Emma with a simple message, "Did you get one?" Her reply came within minutes. "Yes. It's gorgeous. Though I'm confused why they're calling it their beach house. Did you give it to them?" "No," I typed back. "But he has a key, and Madison's been posting photos from there for months now. I assumed they were just using it on weekends." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, "Mom. You need to talk to him." She was right, but something stopped me from picking up the phone immediately. Madison Rothschild had entered our lives 18 months ago like a perfume advertisement come to life, all flowing blonde hair, designer athleisure wear, and casual mentions of her father's tech company. Tyler, my earnest, hard-working son who'd put himself through state college and worked his way up at an architectural firm, had been instantly besotted. Within 3 months, he'd stopped coming to Sunday dinners. Within 6, he traded his Honda Civic for a BMW Madison's father had gotten him at cost. Within 9, they were engaged. I tried to be happy for him. I'd smiled through the engagement party at the Rothschild Bel Air mansion, where Madison's mother Courtney had air kissed my cheeks while somehow never actually touching me, and her father Gerard had shaken my hand with the distant warmth of someone greeting a caterer. I'd laughed at Tyler's jokes about finally moving up in the world even though something in his tone made my stomach hurt. But this. Sending out save the dates for an event at my property without asking permission? That crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I called him that evening, after I'd had time to organize my thoughts into something other than hurt feelings. "Mom. Hey. Tyler's voice had that overenthusiastic quality he developed lately, as though every conversation required the energy of a game show host. Did you get the save the date? Aren't they incredible? Madison worked with this designer who does all the celebrity weddings, and, Tyler. I kept my voice level. We need to talk about the venue. A pause stretched between us, filled with the sound of traffic in the background. He was driving somewhere, probably in that ridiculous BMW. What about it? His tone had shifted, defensive now. You can't host your wedding at the beach house without discussing it with me first. I own that property. Come on, Mom. Don't be like that. The game show host was gone, replaced by the wheedling voice of the teenager who'd once tried to convince me that a C in calculus was basically a B. You're always saying how the place just sits empty most of the time. This way it gets used. Plus, it's not like we're strangers, I'm your son. That's not the point. The insurance alone. Madison's dad is handling all of that. He's got event insurance, liability coverage, the whole 9 yards. Professional vendors, security, everything. You don't have to worry about a thing. Something about the way he said it, so breezy and dismissive, made my jaw clench. I'm not worried. I'm telling you that you need to ask permission before making plans for my property. Oh my gosh, Mom, he sighed, long and theatrical. Fine. Can we please use the beach house for our wedding? Pretty please with sugar on top? The sarcasm in his voice felt like a slap. This wasn't the boy I'd raised, the one who used to bring me terrible Mother's Day breakfasts in bed and earnestly ask my opinion on everything from college majors to job offers. That boy had been replaced by someone I barely recognized. We'll talk about it later, I said, and ended the call before he could protest. Emma called 30 seconds later. He just texted me freaking out that you're being difficult about the wedding. What happened? I filled her in while walking circles around my kitchen, too agitated to sit down. Emma, bless her, understood immediately. He didn't ask you first? Mom, that's insane. Even Madison should know better, her family's all about property and appearances. They'd lose their minds if someone assumed they could use their Bel Air place. I think that's exactly it, I said slowly, the realization forming as I spoke. The Rothschild wouldn't let them use their house for some reason. So Tyler thought he could just take mine. Without asking. After essentially ghosting us for a year and a half. The bitterness in Emma's voice matched the feeling spreading through my chest. My daughter had tried so hard to maintain a relationship with her older brother, but Tyler had canceled plans with her 6 times in the past 8 months. Always last minute. Always with elaborate excuses about work dinners or Madison's family obligations. Emma had finally stopped trying, and I'd watched her heart break a little more with each ignored text. Give him a chance to apologize, Emma said finally. Maybe he'll realize how messed up this is. But Tyler didn't call to apologize. Instead, 3 days later, Madison did. Sarah. Hi. Her voice had that performative warmth that always made me feel like I was being sold something. Tyler mentioned you had some questions about the wedding venue, and I just wanted to call and clear everything up. I was in my office between client meetings. I ran a small interior design business, nothing glamorous, but it kept me comfortable, and Madison's timing couldn't have been worse. Or maybe it was calculated. Hard to tell with her. Madison, hello. Yes, I do have questions. Mainly about why I wasn't consulted before you sent out save the dates listing my property as your venue. Oh, that, she laughed, a practice sound like wind chimes. Tyler said it would be fine. He's always talking about how you're so generous with the house, always telling him to use it whenever. We just assumed, assuming doesn't cover event insurance, vendor access, or the fact that I have other plans for the property that weekend. The lie came out smoothly. I didn't have plans. But I needed to know how they'd react to being told no. A beat of silence. Then, other plans? Tyler said you barely use the place anymore. My usage of my own property isn't really the issue here, Madison. Right. Of course. I just mean, she paused, and I could almost hear her recalculating. Sarah, this wedding means everything to us. We've already sent out the save the dates. We've hired vendors who've blocked off that weekend specifically for the Malibu location. My parents have invited some very important people who are expecting a beachfront celebration. Surely you can understand how difficult it would be to change everything now? The entitlement in her voice was staggering. No apology. No acknowledgement that she'd overstepped. Just an expectation that I would bend to accommodate her vision. Perhaps you should have confirmed the venue was available before sending out announcements, I said quietly. Look. The wind chimes were gone now, replaced by something harder. I'm trying to be respectful here. I know you and Tyler have had some tension lately. We haven't had tension. We've barely had conversation. And I don't want to get in the middle of family drama. But I think you need to ask yourself if you really want to be the reason your son's wedding gets ruined. My father has already told everyone at his company about this event. People are arranging travel, booking hotels. If we have to cancel now, the embarrassment alone. I'm not canceling anything, I interrupted. Because nothing was confirmed to begin with. You can't cancel an event that was never approved. The silence that followed felt dangerous. I see, Madison said finally, her voice arctic. I'm going to give you some time to think about what this means for your relationship with your son. I really hope you'll reconsider being so selfish about this. She hung up before I could respond. Selfish. The word rattled around my skull for the rest of the day. I'd raised 2 children mostly on my own after Richard's heart attack when Tyler was 15 and Emma was 12. I'd worked 60-hour weeks to keep them in their same schools, same house, same life. I'd driven Tyler to every baseball game, attended every parent-teacher conference, helped him with college applications while Emma cried herself to sleep missing her father. I'd given him the down payment for his first apartment and had his friends over for dinner every Sunday for years. And now I was selfish for not surrendering my property without a conversation? Emma called that night, upset. Tyler just sent me this long text about how you're trying to ruin his life. Mom, what is happening? He's in over his head, I said, staring at the glass of wine I'd poured but couldn't bring myself to drink. Madison and her family have expectations he can't meet, so he's trying to use my resources to keep up. Well, it's wrong. You need to stand your ground. I plan to. But standing your ground is easier said than done when it's your own child on the other side. I didn't sleep that night, imagining conversations where Tyler came to his senses and apologized, where we laughed about the misunderstanding over coffee. I pictured him showing up at my door the way he used to, without calling first, just assuming he was welcome because of course he was my son. He never showed up. Instead, the following Wednesday, I got another call. This time from his number, but it was Madison's voice. Hi, Sarah. I'm using Tyler's phone because I wanted you to hear this from both of us. A cold feeling spread through my stomach. Hear what? We've made some difficult decisions about the wedding. Her voice was syrupy now, false sympathy dripping through the speaker. After talking with my parents and really thinking about what we want our special day to look like, we've decided we need to keep the guest list small. Very intimate. Just immediate family. That's fine, I said slowly, not understanding where this was going. I assume that means you're not using the beach house? Oh no, we're definitely still using it. My father negotiated directly with Tyler about covering all the costs and insurance. This is really just about the guest situation. My pulse started to pound in my ears. Madison, what are you saying? The thing is, my parents are paying for everything. Every single detail. And they've been very clear about wanting to keep things small and exclusive. They've invited their closest friends and family, and they feel strongly that we should respect their wishes since they're being so generous. Are you uninviting me to my son's wedding? The words came out flat with disbelief. Not just you, she added quickly, as though that made it better. Emma's not coming either. And Tyler's cousins. My parents just feel that with everything they're investing, they should have final say on the guest list. It's nothing personal. We just want to avoid any family drama that could ruin the day. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Family drama? You mean us? His actual family? Look, Sarah, I know this is hard to hear. But this is my day. Mine and Tyler's. And we need you to understand that not everything is about you. Before I could respond, Tyler's voice cut in. He'd apparently been on the line the whole time. Mom, come on. Don't make this harder than it is. Madison's parents are spending a fortune on this wedding. The least we can do is respect their wishes. Let me speak to you alone, I managed. There's nothing to say that Madison doesn't already know. We're a unit now. This is our decision. Your decision to disinvite your mother and sister from your wedding while hosting it at property I own. My dad handled the property issue, Madison interjected smoothly. He's drawing up a rental agreement for that weekend. We'll pay you fair market value for a weekend rental. You'll actually make money off this, so I don't see what you're complaining about. The audacity of it stole my breath. They wanted to rent my house to throw a wedding I wasn't invited to. They wanted me to profit from my own exclusion. No, I said. Mom, Tyler started. No. Absolutely not. You cannot use the property. This conversation is over. You're being unreasonable. I said no. I ended the call and immediately blocked both their numbers. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Emma called 5 minutes later, crying. He just texted me the same thing. We're both out. But his new family gets to celebrate at your beach house. How is this real? It's not going to happen, I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. They're not using the house. Tyler has a key, though. What if they just do it anyway? The question stopped me cold. Tyler did have a key. He also knew the security codes, the alarm system, everything. And Madison's father clearly had the money and connections to handle any legal issues if I tried to stop them after the fact. They could claim Tyler had permission, that it was a misunderstanding. By the time courts got involved, the wedding would be over. Unless I took more drastic action. I spent the next 2 days researching California property law, talking to my attorney, and making phone calls. What I learned was both enlightening and infuriating. Unless I took immediate steps to revoke Tyler's access and explicitly forbade the use of the property in writing, they could absolutely claim implied permission. My own generosity in giving him a key could be used against me. My attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia who'd handled Richard's estate, laid it out plainly. Send a cease and desist letter immediately. Change the locks. Install security cameras if you don't have them already. Document everything. If they proceed with the event after being explicitly forbidden in writing, you'll have grounds for legal action. But Sarah, she hesitated. You know this will permanently damage your relationship with your son. He already did that, I said. I'm just protecting what's mine. The letter went out by certified mail that Friday. In it, I explicitly revoked any permission Tyler or Madison Rothschild had to use the property for any purpose, including but not limited to their planned wedding event. I required return of all keys and remotes. I warned that any attempt to access the property would be considered trespassing and would result in criminal and civil penalties. I changed the locks that same day. A security company came that Monday to install cameras covering every entrance, the deck, and the beach access. Tyler called from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and bitter. I hope you're happy. You've officially ruined my life. Don't expect to hear from me again. Emma forwarded me a series of texts Tyler had sent her, each one more venomous than the last. Madison was also texting mutual acquaintances, spinning a narrative about a difficult, controlling mother who couldn't let go. The Rothschild family attorney apparently called my attorney, threatening legal action for emotional distress and interference with contractual relationships, though Patricia dismissed it as empty posturing. They have no case, she assured me. You can't interfere with a contract that never existed. But winning the legal battle didn't make the personal one hurt less. I waited for Tyler to come to his senses, to realize what he'd said to me, what he'd done. I waited for an apology that never came. Instead, 3 weeks before their original wedding date, I got an invitation in the mail. Not from Tyler and Madison, from a colleague of mine named Jennifer, who I'd worked with on several design projects over the years. She and her fiancé Mark were getting married in August, and wanted to know if I'd help them with some decoration ideas for their small ceremony. We're keeping it simple, Jennifer told me over coffee. Just immediate family and close friends. But we're struggling to find a venue that doesn't cost a fortune. Everything decent books up a year in advance, and we just got engaged 3 months ago. An idea began forming, dangerous and perfect. What's your date? I asked. August 17th. The same weekend as Tyler's wedding. How would you feel about a beach house in Malibu? I kept my voice casual. I have a property that's available that weekend. Beautiful deck, private beach access, stunning views. I'd let you use it at cost, basically just enough to cover the cleaning service and insurance. Jennifer's face lit up like sunrise. Are you serious? Sarah, that would be incredible. But why so cheap? Because you're a friend, I said simply. And the place should be used for celebrations. We arranged everything that week. Jennifer and Mark came to see the property, fell in love with it immediately, and signed a rental agreement. I walked them through the space, showed them where everything was, helped Jennifer envision how she wanted to decorate the deck. Her joy was infectious and genuine. This was a woman marrying the love of her life, not trying to impress corporate executives and social climbers. I didn't tell them about Tyler. That wasn't their burden to carry. The cease and desist letter meant Madison and Tyler should have been looking for alternative venues immediately. But I knew they'd likely waited, hoping I'd change my mind. Madison struck me as someone used to getting her way through persistence and pressure. And Tyler, well, he was probably in complete denial that his mother would actually follow through. I found out I was right when Emma texted me in early August. Tyler just called me screaming that you rented the beach house to someone else for his wedding weekend. He said you did it on purpose to hurt him. I rented my property to paying tenants for a specific date, I replied. What he chose to do with his wedding plans was up to him. He says they had everything planned for that location. All the vendors, the tent rental, catering, everything. Madison is apparently having a breakdown. They had months to make other arrangements after I explicitly told them they couldn't use the property. I know, Mom. I'm just telling you what's happening. He's threatening to show up anyway and call the police on your renters. That crossed a line that made my decision feel less like revenge and more like necessity. I called Patricia immediately. If he shows up, he'll be the one arrested for trespassing, she said. But let me draft a letter making that crystal clear. And inform your renters about the situation, they have a right to know. The conversation with Jennifer was difficult. I kept it factual. My son had assumed he could use the property without permission for his own wedding. I told him no. He might still attempt to show up. To my surprise, Jennifer squeezed my hand across her kitchen table. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Family stuff is the worst. Don't worry, Mark's brothers are both coming early to help set up. If your son shows up, we'll handle it. I don't want your wedding disrupted by my family drama. Hey, every wedding has some drama. At least ours involves trying to keep people out instead of wishing we could. She smiled gently. You're doing the right thing, you know. Standing your ground. I can't imagine how hard it is with your own son, but you can't let people walk all over you just because you share DNA. The week before the wedding, I drove out to Malibu to make sure everything was perfect for Jennifer and Mark. I stocked the refrigerator with champagne, left fresh flowers on the tables, and made sure every detail was exactly as they'd requested. Standing on the deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink, I thought about all the memories Richard and I had made here. Tyler learning to body surf. Emma collecting shells. Family barbecues that lasted until the stars came out. My son had taken those memories and tried to use them as a backdrop for a celebration I wasn't invited to. He'd chosen appearances over authenticity, his future in-laws money over his own family. And he'd done it without a hint of shame until I'd stood in his way. The night before the wedding, Emma came to stay with me at my house in Los Angeles. We ordered Thai food and watched old movies, but neither of us could focus. The elephant in the room was too large to ignore. Do you think he'll actually show up? Emma asked during a commercial break. I hope not. But I've prepared for it if he does. How are you so calm about all this? I turned to look at my daughter, her father's eyes staring back at me with concern. I'm not calm. I'm heartbroken. But I'm also done letting people treat me like I'm disposable. Your brother made his choices. He's dealing with the consequences. Madison's family could afford any venue in California. They probably have connections that could get them something nice even last minute. You're right. Which means if they're really scrambling, it's because they specifically wanted the Malibu house. Probably for the photos, the story, the cash of a private beach house. Reality didn't match their Instagram fantasy. Emma laughed, sharp and bitter. That's exactly what this is. Madison's been posting about her intimate beachfront celebration for months. All her influencer friends were commenting about how jealous they were. Well, she'll have to post about something else now. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, you've made a huge mistake. When Tyler realizes what you've done to him, he'll never forgive you. You'll lose your son forever. I hope it was worth it. Courtney Rothschild. I showed Emma, who read it with mounting fury. That's Tyler's future mother-in-law threatening you? What is wrong with these people? They're not used to being told no. I deleted the text. It's fine. They have no power here. But I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining Tyler showing up at the beach house, causing a scene, humiliating Jennifer and Mark. I pictured police cars and shouting matches and my son being led away in handcuffs. Every worst-case scenario played on repeat until Emma found me at 3 a.m. sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Mom, she said softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, you did the right thing. Did I? Or did I just drive him further away? He drove himself away when he uninvited us from his wedding. You're just protecting yourself. The morning of the wedding, I got a call from the security company. Someone had attempted to enter the property at 6 a.m. using an old key code. The alarm had triggered, and the police had been dispatched. My heart stopped. Was anyone arrested? No, ma'am. The individuals left before officers arrived. But we have clear video footage if you need it for legal purposes. Send it to me. Please. The video showed Tyler and Gerard Rothschild, Madison's father, both in polo shirts and khakis, trying to punch in the old code at the deck door. When the alarm went off, they'd argued for a moment. I could see their mouths moving, hands gesturing, before retreating to a black Mercedes in the driveway. The timestamp reads 6:07 a.m. They'd actually tried to break in. Or at least Gerard had talked Tyler into trying. Either way, my son had attempted to commit a crime to access my property for his wedding. I forwarded the video to Patricia with shaking hands. Her response came within minutes. This is attempted breaking and entering. You have grounds to file a police report. However, given the family nature of this situation, I'd recommend having the security company send a formal warning letter to both parties. It creates a legal record without criminal charges. Let me know how you want to proceed. I sat with the decision for several minutes. Pressing charges against my own son felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But letting it go completely felt like enabling his behavior. I called the security company and requested the warning letter. They'd send it to both Tyler and Gerard, informing them that any further attempts to access the property would result in immediate police involvement and criminal charges. Then I called Jennifer. Everything okay there? Perfect. We're setting up now. The caterers just arrived, and oh my gosh, Sarah, this place is even more beautiful in the morning. Thank you so much for this gift. Did anyone try to show up? Any disruptions? Nope. Smooth sailing. Mark's brothers got here super early just in case, but it's been totally peaceful. Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to sit down. Good. That's good. I hope you have the most wonderful day. We will, thanks to you. Emma and I spent the day trying not to obsessively check our phones. We went to a museum, had lunch at a cafe Richard used to love, walked through the botanical gardens. But the wedding hung over everything like a storm cloud. Around 4 p.m., Emma's phone buzzed. It's Tyler, she said, her voice tight. He wants to meet. He says we need to talk about what Mom has done to him. Don't respond, I said immediately. I have to say something. He's still my brother. Then tell him you'll talk to him after his wedding. After he's had time to cool down and think clearly. Emma typed out a careful message and showed it to me before sending. I love you, but I need you to take some time to think about everything that's happened. We can talk next week. I hope you and Madison have a beautiful day, wherever you end up celebrating. The response came instantly, you're just as bad as she is. Have fun being alone with your bitter mother. Emma's face crumpled. I pulled her into a hug while she cried, this strong, beautiful daughter of mine who'd done nothing wrong except refuse to enable her brother's entitled behavior. He doesn't mean it, I whispered, though I wasn't sure that was true. Yes, he does. Right now, at least, he means every word. We went home and Emma fell asleep on my couch, exhausted from crying. I sat in my office, ostensibly working on design plans for a client, but mostly just staring at the computer screen. Around 8 p.m., my phone rang. Patricia. I wanted to give you a heads up, she said. I just received a call from the Rothschild family attorney. Apparently, Tyler and Madison did end up getting married today. My chest tightened. Where? City Hall. Quick ceremony, just them and Madison's parents as witnesses. The attorney wanted me to know that they're considering a civil suit against you for emotional distress and economic damages related to the wedding venue situation. Let them try. That's what I told him. We have documentation of everything, the cease and desist, the rental agreement with your other tenants, the attempted break-in. They have no case. This is just posturing because they're embarrassed. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. My son had gotten married, and I hadn't been there. Emma hadn't been there. His aunts, uncles, cousins, the family who'd loved and supported him his entire life, none of us had been there. Instead, he'd stood in a courthouse with a woman who'd isolated him from everyone who actually knew him, presided over by her parents who'd bought and paid for his loyalty. And I'd played a part in that. Not through any action I regretted, but through refusing to be a doormat. By setting boundaries? By saying no to people who expected automatic yes. The question that would haunt me was whether there had been another way. Could I have handled it differently? Should I have let them use the house and attended the wedding as a guest, swallowing my hurt for the sake of maintaining some relationship with my son? But I knew the answer. If I'd said yes, it would have set a precedent. It would have taught Tyler that he could treat me however he wanted, take whatever he needed, and I'd always give in. It would have told Emma that family means nothing in the face of money and social climbing. It would have betrayed everything Richard and I had tried to teach our children about respect, boundaries, and reciprocal relationships. Jennifer sent me photos the next day. The ceremony had been simple and beautiful, the deck decorated with white flowers and flowing fabric that caught the ocean breeze. She and Mark looked radiantly happy, surrounded by people who genuinely loved them. There was no pretense, no performance. Just two people committing their lives to each other with the people who mattered most standing witness. Thank you for giving us the perfect day, her note read. I don't know what's happening with your family situation, but I hope you know you did a really kind thing for us. This is a memory we'll treasure forever. I printed the photos and put them in an album. Someday, maybe, I'd be able to look at them without my heart breaking over what should have been. Tyler didn't call. Didn't text. The silence stretched from days into weeks. Emma tried reaching out twice, carefully worded messages that went unanswered. Madison posted wedding photos on social media, City Hall steps, her in a simple white dress, Tyler in a suit I didn't recognize. The captions were all about intimate celebrations and what really matters. No mention of the elaborate Malibu beach wedding that never happened. Friends started asking questions. People who'd received save the dates but never got actual invitations. I kept my answers vague, the plans changed. They decided to do something smaller. I didn't elaborate. Didn't point fingers. It wasn't my story to tell, even though I was living with the consequences. The hardest moment came 6 weeks later when Emma called me, crying so hard I could barely understand her words. "Mom," she finally managed. "Tyler called. He wants his wedding gift." "What?" "He said since we didn't come to his wedding, the least we could do is send the gifts we would have given." Madison made a comment about how tacky it is that his family hasn't sent anything. "He wants me to ask you what you got them and when you're planning to send it." The audacity of it was almost impressive. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell," and hung up. "But Mom," her voice broke again. "That's my brother. How did we get here?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I really don't know." That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I wrote Tyler a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter, handwritten on good stationery, the kind Richard used to use for important correspondence. "Dear Tyler, I'm writing this not because I expect a response, but because some things need to be said, even if you're not ready to hear them. The beach house in Malibu wasn't just a piece of real estate to me. It was where your father taught you to surf. Where your sister learned to love the ocean. Where we spent every anniversary, every summer, every moment we could steal from regular life. When Dad died, I kept that house even though it would have been easier to sell it. I kept it because it held our family memories, and I wanted you and Emma to always have that connection to him. When you announced your wedding plans without asking me first, you weren't just being inconsiderate. You were treating that sacred space like a rental property, something to be used for appearances and Instagram photos. You were erasing all those memories to create new ones that didn't include the family who made them with you. I didn't refuse you the house to be cruel. I refused because you asked me to participate in my own exclusion. You wanted me to hand over something precious so you could celebrate without me there. You wanted me to pay for, literally and emotionally, a wedding that made it clear I was no longer part of your life. Madison's family has given you a lot. Money, connections, a certain kind of life. But somewhere in accepting all of that, you forgot that some things can't be bought. Loyalty can't be bought. History can't be bought. Love that exists without conditions or price tags can't be bought. I miss my son. The one who used to call me just to talk about his day. The one who brought Emma soup when she had the flu and didn't tell anyone because he didn't need credit. The one who cried at his father's funeral and told me he'd always take care of me. That son is welcome in my life anytime. The man who treats me like an obstacle to his ambitions, who throws away decades of love for social advancement, who asks for wedding gifts after uninviting me to his wedding, I don't know that person. I hope you find your way back. But I won't be waiting on the sidelines, accepting whatever scraps of attention you decide to throw my way. I've learned, painfully, that love needs to be mutual. That family means something more than DNA. The door is open if you ever want to walk through it. But you'll need to leave the entitlement and the resentment outside. I love you. I always will. But I also love myself too much to accept being treated as disposable. Mom, I mailed it the next morning before I could second guess myself. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. 3 months passed. Emma finished her graduate program and got a job she loved. I took on a major design project that kept me busy 12 hours a day. Life moved forward, as it does, even when part of your heart is missing. Then, on a rainy afternoon in November, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Tyler standing on my porch, soaked through, no umbrella, no jacket. We stared at each other for a long moment. "Can I come in?" he asked finally. His voice was different somehow. Smaller. More like the boy I remembered. I stepped aside, and he walked into my living room, dripping on the hardwood floors. I got him a towel without speaking. He dried his face and hair, then sat on the edge of my couch, still not quite looking at me. "Madison left me," he said abruptly. 6 weeks ago. She said I wasn't the person she thought she was marrying. Said I was too attached to my old life. Too middle class. Her parents agreed. They thought she could do better. I sat down across from him, waiting. I lost my job too. Gerard got me that position at his friend's firm, and when Madison and I split, suddenly my performance wasn't meeting expectations anymore. I've been living in a studio apartment in Burbank, freelancing, trying to figure out what happened to my life. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "I got your letter. I've read it probably 100 times. Tyler, let me finish. Please." He took a shaky breath. "You were right. About everything. I let Madison and her family turn me into someone I didn't recognize. I threw away everything that actually mattered because I was so desperate to be part of their world. And the worst part is, I didn't even see it until it all fell apart." "What changed?" I asked quietly. Madison's father sat me down after she left and explained, very clearly, that I was never actually part of their family. I was a project. An experiment. Madison wanted to see if she could shape someone into what she wanted, and I let her do it. I let her because part of me always felt like I wasn't good enough. Like I needed to be more, have more, be someone different. Tears were running down his face now. I threw away my real family for people who saw me as a temporary amusement. And the thing I can't stop thinking about is that you knew. You tried to warn me, and I called you selfish. I uninvited you to my wedding and expected you to just accept it. "You did," I said, because there was no point softening it. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I needed to come here and tell you that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. For all of it. For taking you for granted, for letting Madison manipulate me, for treating you like you were the problem when you were the only one trying to protect me." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the boy I'd raised underneath the damage. He was thinner now, with shadows under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. The cocky, ambitious climber was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned a brutal lesson about the cost of betraying yourself. "I forgive you," I said, and watched shock ripple across his face. "Just like that?" "No, not just like that. You hurt me badly. You hurt Emma. You threw away our love like it was worthless. But you're my son, and I can see that you understand what you did. That matters. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you and Emma. You don't need to make it up. You need to rebuild. Starting with yourself. Figure out who Tyler Morrison actually is, not who you think you should be. And maybe, eventually, we can rebuild our relationship too. But that takes time." He nodded, wiping his face with a towel. "Emma won't answer my calls. Can you blame her? No. Give her time. She loves you, but she's not going to forget how you treated her. I know." He stood up, hesitated, then asked, "Can I hug you?" I stood and let him wrap his arms around me. He was still my son, still the baby I'd brought home from the hospital and the little boy who'd climbed into my bed during thunderstorms. But he was also a grown man who'd made terrible choices and was now facing the consequences. Both things could be true. When he pulled away, I asked the question I'd been holding back. "Did you ever actually love her?" Tyler thought about it for a long moment. "I loved who I thought she was. Or maybe I loved who I got to be when I was with her. Someone successful and sophisticated and part of something bigger. But no, I don't think I loved Madison herself. I don't think I ever really knew her." "That's probably the most honest thing you've said since you walked in here." He gave me a watery smile. "I'm trying to be more honest about everything. It's harder than it sounds." After he left, I called Emma and told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long time. "Do you believe him?" she finally asked. I believe he's hurting and he's sorry. Whether he's actually changed or just scared of being alone, that's something only time will tell. Are you going to just let him back into your life like nothing happened? No. I'm going to let him prove he deserves to be back in my life. There's a difference. Emma was silent again. Then, I'm not ready to talk to him yet. That's okay. Take all the time you need. Tyler came back a week later. And the week after that. Each time, we talked a little more. He told me about his marriage, the warning signs he'd ignored, the way Madison's family had slowly isolated him from anyone who might question their influence. He told me about losing his job and discovering that most of his new friends were really Madison's friends, and they'd vanished the moment she left him. He asked about the business, about my life, about things he hadn't bothered to ask about in 2 years. He helped me fix a leaking faucet and clean out the garage. Small things, but they mattered. Gradually, carefully, we started to rebuild. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before, that was gone, broken by choices that couldn't be unmade. But it was something new, something more honest. Tyler was humbler now, more aware of his own fallibility. He'd learned the hard way that success without substance is just a pretty facade. Emma took longer to come around. She met with him finally, 3 months after his first visit to me, and they had what she later described as the most honest conversation we've ever had. She didn't forgive him immediately. But she agreed to try. One evening in March, Tyler asked if we could visit the beach house together. I hadn't been there since Jennifer's wedding, hadn't been able to face it. But something about his request felt right. We drove out together on a Saturday morning. Tyler had returned his key months ago, so I had to let us in. The house was exactly as I'd left it, clean, maintained, waiting. We walked out onto the deck and Tyler stood at the railing, looking out at the ocean. I ruined this place for you, didn't I? He said. No. You made it complicated. But it's still ours. Still full of the good memories. I was going to get married here without you, he said softly. I was going to stand on this deck with people who didn't care about me and pretend it was everything I'd ever wanted. And I was going to pretend that not having you and Emma and Dad's family there didn't matter. But it did matter. It was the only thing that actually mattered. I just couldn't see it. We stayed for hours, talking about Richard, about the good summers, about the ways grief and fear can make you do desperate things. Tyler told me about his plans to get back on his feet, about the smaller firm that had offered him a position, about his determination to live a life that felt true instead of impressive. As the sun started to set, painting the sky in those familiar golds and pinks, Tyler turned to me. Thank you, he said. For not giving in. For standing your ground even when I tried to make you the villain. You saved me from making an even bigger mistake. What mistake was that? Thinking that love is something you buy or earn with the right achievements. You showed me that real love, the kind worth having, sometimes means saying no. Sometimes it means letting people face consequences. Sometimes it means standing alone because standing together would mean betraying yourself. I reached out and took his hand. You're going to be okay. We're going to be okay, he corrected. All of us. Eventually. He was right. Eventually, we were okay. Not perfect, not the way we'd been before, but okay in a new way that acknowledged what we'd lost and what we'd learned. Emma slowly let Tyler back into her life. We had Sunday dinners again, though now they felt like a choice instead of an obligation. Tyler dated someone new eventually, a teacher named Rachel who reminded me of the girl he'd dated in college, smart and funny with zero interest in impressing anyone. The beach house is still mine. I've started renting it out occasionally, mostly to friends and people who understand what it means. Jennifer and Mark had their first anniversary there. Emma brought her new boyfriend for a weekend. And yes, Tyler and Rachel came once, and I joined them for dinner on that beautiful deck. Life moved forward. The rift healed slowly, leaving scars but also wisdom. And sometimes, when I sit on that deck watching the sunset, I think about the wedding that never happened and feel nothing but relief. Because the day I refused to let my son use my property for a wedding I wasn't invited to, I taught him something more valuable than any celebration could have offered. I taught him that love has to be mutual. That family isn't disposable. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's self-destruction. And in the end, that lesson saved us both.
Story 5. I froze in the hallway outside our bedroom when I heard my fiancée sobbing into her phone. I'm marrying John in 2 weeks, but Mark is the one I really want. I've always wanted Mark, but he's with someone else and I don't know what to do. When she came out and saw me standing there, she grabbed my arm and begged, "It's just cold feet, I swear, please don't." I just walked away without a word. That was 48 hours ago. This morning. This morning, I woke up in a hotel room that smelled like industrial cleaning products and stale coffee. The alarm on my phone had been buzzing for 10 minutes before I finally turned it off. My best man, Danny, was supposed to meet me at 9 to finalize the bachelor party details. Instead, I texted him that everything was cancelled. The message I got back was immediate: "What happened?" I didn't respond. How do you explain that your entire future crumbled in the 30 seconds it took to walk down a hallway? How do you tell someone that the woman you'd spent 3 years building a life with had been pining for another man the whole time? Sarah had called 47 times since Wednesday night. I know because I counted. Each voicemail started the same way, with her voice cracking, trying to explain, trying to minimize. The last one came at 3 in the morning. "John, please. I love you. I made a mistake saying it out loud, but it doesn't mean anything. Mark is just a fantasy. You're real. We're real." A fantasy. She'd reduced an entire emotional affair, because what else could you call it, to a fantasy? As if that made it better. As if knowing she'd rather be with someone else but settled for me because he wasn't available was supposed to comfort me. I'd met Mark exactly twice. Once at Sarah's company holiday party last December, and once at a barbecue her coworker hosted in July. He worked in the same building, different department. Tall, athletic build, one of those guys who seemed effortlessly confident without being obnoxious about it. Sarah had barely mentioned him after those encounters. Maybe 3 or 4 times in passing when she'd talk about work drama or office politics. I should have noticed. Looking back now, the signs were there. The way she'd glance at her phone with a specific expression when certain messages came through. How she'd gotten particular about her appearance on Thursdays. Mark's team apparently had weekly cross-departmental meetings. The time I'd suggested we visit my parents for Thanksgiving and she'd insisted we stay in town because of a work commitment that never quite materialized. But you don't see what you're not looking for. You trust. You build. You assume the person you're planning to marry is all in. My phone rang. Danny again. This time I answered. "Where are you?" His voice had that careful quality people use when they're worried but trying not to show it. "Embassy Suites on Randolph." "I'm coming over." "You don't have to. I'm already in my car." He hung up before I could argue. Danny had been my roommate in college, stood beside me through my father's funeral, helped me move 4 times. If anyone had earned the right to show up uninvited, it was him. 20 minutes later, he knocked. I let him in without saying anything. He took one look at me, still in the same clothes I'd been wearing Wednesday night, unshaven, probably looking like I'd aged 5 years in 2 days, and headed straight for the coffee maker. "Start from the beginning," he said, measuring out grounds. So I told him. Everything. The phone call I'd overheard, Sarah's panic when she found me in the hallway, the way she'd tried to spin it as meaningless cold feet. How I'd packed a bag while she followed me from room to room, oscillating between tears and anger, telling me I was overreacting, that I was throwing away 3 years over nothing. Danny listened without interrupting. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed. When I finished, he poured 2 cups and sat across from me. "You call off the wedding?" he asked. "Not officially. I haven't contacted the venue or the caterer or any of that." "But you're going to?" It wasn't a question. I nodded anyway. "What about your deposit?" "I don't care about the money." He took a long sip. "You should. It's 12 grand. I'd forgotten Danny had helped me review the contracts. He was an accountant, couldn't help seeing the world in spreadsheets and bottom lines. "The contract has a clause," I said slowly, remembering. "If either party calls it off more than 14 days before the event, you forfeit the deposit. Inside 14 days, you lose everything, the deposit plus the full balance." Danny set his cup down. "You're at 12 days. 11, actually. The wedding's a week from Saturday. So you wait. Call it off Monday, you lose 12,000. Call it off today, you lose 48,000. The arithmetic felt absurd. As if the dissolution of my relationship could be calculated in dollars and timelines. But Danny was right. If I was going to end this, I might as well not destroy my savings in the process. "What do you do until Monday?" Danny asked. I hadn't thought that far ahead. "Stay here, I guess." "And Sarah? What about her?" "She's going to keep calling. Keep trying to fix it." "Are you going to talk to her?" I'd asked myself the same thing approximately 200 times since Wednesday. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to let her explain, to see if there was some context I'd missed that would make it all make sense. The other part, the part that had heard the raw longing in her voice when she'd said Mark's name, knew there was nothing she could say that would change what I'd learned. "No," I said finally. Danny nodded. "You need a distraction. Get out of this room. It smells like sadness and Lysol." He wasn't wrong. We ended up at a diner 3 blocks away. I ordered pancakes I didn't want and pushed them around my plate while Danny worked through a Denver omelet. The place was half full, Mostly older couples and a few solo diners hunched over newspapers. Normal people living normal Friday mornings, unaware that my life had imploded. You ever meet this Mark guy? Danny asked. Twice. He seemed fine. Friendly. Did Sarah act weird around him? I tried to remember. The holiday party had been crowded, lots of people rotating through conversations. Sarah had introduced us, they'd chatted about some project deadline, and then someone from HR had pulled her away. The barbecue was similar, brief pleasantries, nothing that stood out. No, I said. She was normal. Maybe she's good at hiding it. Or maybe I'm just oblivious. Danny shook his head. Don't do that. Don't make this about you missing something. She's the one who lied. Lied? The word sat heavy between us. Sarah hadn't technically lied, she'd never said she loved Mark or admitted to wanting him. But omission was its own kind of dishonesty. Every day she'd woken up next to me, knowing she'd rather be somewhere else, was a lie. Every time she'd said yes to wedding planning, to venue visits, to cake tastings, was a lie. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah, please come home. We can work through this. I'm so sorry. I turned the phone face down. You should block her number, Danny suggested. Not yet. Why not? Because I was a coward. Because some small, pathetic part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation that would make sense. Because cutting her off completely felt like admitting defeat. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I changed the subject. Did you ever have doubts about Melissa? Danny had gotten married 2 years ago to a woman he'd met through a dating app. Their wedding had been small, elegant, exactly the kind of low-stress event Sarah and I had originally planned before her mother got involved and everything spiraled into a 200-person production. Sure, Danny said. Everyone has doubts. But mine were about me, whether I was ready, whether I'd be a good husband. They weren't about her. That's the difference. The difference. Sarah's doubts weren't about our relationship's logistics or her own readiness. They were about me not being the person she actually wanted. You can work through cold feet. You can't work through wishing you were marrying someone else. We sat there until the waitress started giving us pointed looks. Danny paid, I didn't argue, and we walked back to the hotel. He made me promise to check out the next day and stay at his place instead. Melissa's already setting up the guest room, he said. And before you say no, remember that she's terrifying when she doesn't get her way. He was trying to make me smile. It almost worked. After he left, I finally listened to Sarah's voicemails. Most were variations of the same theme, apologies, explanations, desperate pleas for me to come back so we could talk in person. But the one from 3 a.m. was different. I know you hate me right now, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. And you have every right. But you need to understand that Mark was never real. He was just this idea I had, this person I built up in my head because work was stressful and wedding planning was overwhelming and sometimes it felt easier to imagine being with someone who existed in my imagination instead of dealing with real life. But that's all it was. Imagination. You're the one I chose. You're the one I want to marry. Please don't let one stupid phone call destroy 3 years. I played it twice more. It was the most coherent thing she'd said since Wednesday, and it almost sounded reasonable. Almost. Except she'd said Mark's name with such conviction, such ache. You don't sound like that about a fantasy. You sound like that about something real you can't have. I deleted all the voicemails. Not blocked yet, but deleted. Baby steps. The rest of Friday passed in a blur of bad television and room service. I checked out Saturday morning and drove to Danny's place in silence. Melissa met me at the door with a hug that lasted longer than comfortable and showed me to the guest room without asking questions I couldn't answer. Stay as long as you need, she said simply. That night, I finally opened my laptop. Our wedding website was still live, photos of Sarah and me at the beach where I'd proposed, details about the venue, a countdown timer showing 10 days remaining. I could take it down. Should take it down. Instead, I just closed the laptop. Sunday morning, Melissa made French toast. We ate on their back patio, pretending everything was normal. Danny kept checking his phone, which was unusual for him. The third time, Melissa kicked him under the table. What? He said defensively. You're being obvious. About what? I asked. They exchanged a look. Melissa sighed. He's been monitoring Sarah's social media. Why? Because I wanted to see if she'd post anything, Danny admitted. And she did. This morning. He handed me his phone. Sarah's profile showed a photo from last year, the two of us at her sister's wedding, dressed up, smiling. The caption read, "Sometimes the person you love most is the person standing right beside you. Counting down the days until I marry my best friend. 10 days to forever." I handed the phone back. She's pretending everything's fine. Or she genuinely thinks you'll come back, Melissa offered. That you'll cool off and realize you overreacted. Did I? The question came out before I could stop it. Overreact? Melissa looked at me with something between pity and exasperation. John, she told someone she wished she was marrying a different person. That's not cold feet. That's a fundamental problem. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing didn't make it easier. Monday morning arrived with the weight of a deadline. I had to start making calls: venue, caterer, photographer, florist. Each conversation would be its own small nightmare, explaining without explaining, fielding questions about whether we'd reschedule, absorbing the disappointment from vendors who'd blocked off their time. I started with the easiest one, the DJ. He was sympathetic, professional, wished me well. Refunded half the deposit without me asking. The photographer was similar, though she seemed more personally invested, asking if there was any chance we'd work it out. No, I said. It was the first time I'd said it out loud with certainty. The venue coordinator was less understanding. You're aware that canceling inside 2 weeks means you forfeit all payments? I'm aware. That's $28,000, Mr. Patterson. I understand. A pause. May I ask what happened? Personal reasons. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll process the cancellation and send you confirmation by end of day. $28,000 gone in a 3-minute phone call. Danny had been right about waiting, though. If I'd called Wednesday night, it would have been $48,000. Small victories. The caterer was next, then the florist, then the string quartet Sarah had insisted we hire even though I'd argued it was excessive. By noon, I'd made 7 calls and lost $34,000. My savings account, once healthy enough for a down payment on a house, now looked anemic. Sarah called while I was on hold with the cake baker. I declined it. She called again 5 minutes later. Then again. Then a text: "What are you doing?" I blocked the number. Should have done it days ago. An hour later, Danny texted: "Sarah's calling me." Don't answer. Too late. She wants to know where you are. What did you tell her? That you needed space and I couldn't help her. And? She started crying and hung up. Guilt twisted in my chest. 3 years with someone doesn't disappear overnight, even when they betray you. Part of me still cared about her pain, still wanted to fix it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. That evening, I drove to the apartment we'd shared. Sarah's car was gone. Tuesday night yoga, probably. I packed methodically: clothes, toiletries, books, my desktop computer. Anything obviously mine. I left the furniture we bought together, the kitchen stuff, the framed photos on the walls. Let her deal with it. I was loading the last box into my car when her car pulled up. She got out slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. John. I kept loading. Please talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. I need you to understand. I understand perfectly. I slammed the trunk harder than necessary. You want to marry Mark. He's not available. So you settled for me. That's not, I didn't settle. I love you. You love me like you'd love a backup plan. Her face crumpled. That's not fair. Fair? I turned to face her fully. You think any of this is fair? You think it's fair that I spent 3 years thinking we were building something real while you were pining for someone else? It wasn't like that. Mark was just. I don't care what Mark was. I care that you were going to marry me while wishing you were marrying him. That's all that matters. I made a mistake. One mistake. And you're throwing away 3 years because of it? You didn't make a mistake, Sarah. You revealed the truth. There's a difference. I got in my car. She stood in the driveway, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Most of me just wanted to leave. I drove back to Danny's place and slept for 12 hours. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected complication. My mother called. John, honey, Sarah's mother just called me. She said you canceled the wedding? I'd forgotten about the parents. Of course they'd talk. Of course this would spread. Yes, I said. What happened? Sarah's mother said it was all a misunderstanding, that you're upset over nothing. It's not nothing, Mom. Well, what is it then? I couldn't tell her. Not yet. The thought of explaining it, of watching her process that her son had been someone's second choice, felt unbearable. It's complicated, I said. I'll explain everything later. But the wedding's off. Are you sure you're not just having cold feet? Every groom gets nervous. Mom, I'm sure. Please trust me on this. A long pause. All right. But when you're ready to talk, I'm here. I know. Thanks. After we hung up, I realized this was just the beginning. My parents, her parents, mutual friends, co-workers, everyone would have questions. Everyone would want explanations. Everyone would have opinions about whether I'd made the right choice. Let them. I was done justifying my decisions. Wednesday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. John Patterson? Speaking. This is Mark Henley. I work with Sarah. I think we need to talk. My stomach dropped. How did you get this number? From Sarah. Look, I know this is weird, but can we meet somewhere? Just for 20 minutes. Every instinct told me to hang up. But curiosity won. Fine. Where? We agreed on a coffee shop near his office. I arrived first, ordered something I wouldn't drink, and took a corner table. Mark showed up 5 minutes later, looking exactly like I remembered, tall, put together, the kind of guy who probably never had to try very hard at anything. He sat down across from me. Thanks for meeting me. I didn't respond. I want you to know that nothing happened between Sarah and me, he said. We're friendly at work, but that's it. I didn't know she felt anything beyond that until she called me yesterday. She called you? She was upset. Said you'd overheard her talking about me and ended things. She wanted me to confirm to you that we've never been involved. So you're here to defend her honor? I'm here because I felt like you deserved to hear it from me directly. There's no affair. No relationship. We've never even had coffee outside the office. He seemed genuine. It should have made me feel better. Instead, it made everything worse. So she's been in love with you this whole time, I said slowly, and you had no idea? I don't know if in love is. She said your name like it hurt. Like she'd been carrying it around for years. That's not a crush. That's something else. Mark looked uncomfortable. I'm seeing someone. Have been for 8 months. Sarah knows that. Doesn't seem to matter to her. He rubbed his face. Look, I'm not trying to minimize what you're feeling. If my girlfriend told someone she'd rather be with someone else, I'd be devastated. I just wanted you to know that I never encouraged it. I never reciprocated. And honestly, if I'd known, I would have kept more distance. Why tell me this now? Because Sarah asked me to. She thinks if you hear it from me, you'll believe there's nothing to worry about. I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match the quiet coffee shop ambience. She really doesn't get it. It doesn't matter if you reciprocated. It doesn't matter if nothing physical happened. She wanted you instead of me. That's the whole problem. Mark nodded slowly. I told her the same thing. She didn't listen. She's good at not listening. We sat there for a moment. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on me, sitting across from the man my fiancée wanted, having a reasonable conversation about the implosion of my life. For what it's worth, Mark said, standing up, I think you're doing the right thing. If someone's not all in, you deserve better. He left. I sat there for another hour, staring at nothing. That night, I finally told my parents everything. My mother cried. My father, never one for emotional displays, just said, you'll get through this, son. It takes time, but you'll get through it. Thursday morning, exactly 1 week before what should have been my wedding day, I got a text from Sarah's sister, Emily. We'd always gotten along well, but we weren't close enough that I expected her to reach out. Can we talk? I have something you should know. I called her. What's going on? I shouldn't be telling you this, she said, voice low like she was hiding. But Sarah's planning something. Planning what? She's going to show up at Danny's place. Tonight. She knows you're staying there. She's going to try to talk to you in person because you blocked her number. How does she know where Danny lives? She looked him up. Found his address online. John, she's not handling this well. Yesterday she called out of work. She's barely eating. Mom's worried she's going to do something drastic. Like what? I don't know. But she's desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. Emily's warning hung in the air. I thanked her and hung up, then immediately texted Danny, Sarah might show up tonight. His response, we'll handle it. Handle it turned out to mean Danny answering the door at 7:30 with Melissa flanking him like a bouncer. I watched from the kitchen as Sarah tried to push past them. I need to see John. Please. He doesn't want to see you, Danny said firmly. I just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain. You've explained enough. He heard everything he needed to hear last Wednesday. Sarah's voice broke. I made a mistake. I said something stupid and now he won't even talk to me. We're supposed to get married in 7 days and he's throwing it all away over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Melissa said, gentler than Danny but still firm. You told someone you wished you were marrying a different person. That's pretty clear. I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. Mark is just a crush. A stupid, meaningless crush. John is the one I love. He's the one I want to marry. I could see her from where I stood, mascara streaking her face, hands gesturing wildly. She looked broken. Part of me wanted to go to her, to end her suffering. But I'd spent 5 days processing my own suffering, and I'd finally reached a place where the idea of marrying her felt impossible. You need to leave, Danny said. Not until I see him. John. She raised her voice, calling toward the house. John, please. We can fix this. I stepped into view. She froze. Go home, Sarah. I can't. Not until we talk. We have nothing to talk about. Yes, we do. We have 3 years to talk about. We have a wedding to talk about. We have a future to talk about. We don't have a future. The words landed like a physical blow. She staggered back, catching herself on the porch railing. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do. You want to marry someone else. I'm not going to compete with a fantasy version of Mark that you've built up in your head. I deserve someone who wants me first, not someone who wants me because they can't have someone else. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You said it yourself. You've always wanted Mark. Always. That doesn't go away just because it's inconvenient. She was sobbing now, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body. Melissa moved forward instinctively, but Danny put a hand on her arm, stopping her. Please, Sarah managed. Please don't do this. I'm not doing this. You did. Last Wednesday, when you told someone else that you've always wanted them. That's when this ended. I walked back inside. Danny and Melissa stayed on the porch until Sarah finally left. When they came back in, Melissa made tea nobody drank and we sat in the living room in heavy silence. That was brutal, Danny finally said. It needed to be done. How are you feeling? I thought about it. Sad. Relieved. Angry. Empty. All of it at once. That's normal. Is it? Melissa nodded. When my first engagement ended, I felt like I'd lost a limb. Like part of me was just missing. It gets better, but it takes time. I'd forgotten Melissa had been engaged before Danny. She rarely talked about it. What happened? I asked. He wanted to move to Seattle for work. I didn't want to leave Chicago. We couldn't compromise, so we split. It was mutual, but it still hurt like crazy. How long until it stopped hurting? She smiled sadly. About 6 months until I could think about him without wanting to cry. A year until I felt normal again. 2 years until I met Danny and remembered what it felt like to be excited about someone. 2 years. It felt impossible. Friday arrived with a strange sense of calm. All the vendors had been notified. All the deposits were forfeit. All that remained was getting through the weekend and officially informing the guests that the wedding was cancelled. I drafted an email. Short, vague, final. Dear friends and family, John and I have decided to call off our wedding. We appreciate your understanding and respect for our privacy during this time. We apologize for any inconvenience. Best, John Patterson, and Sarah Chen. Sarah hadn't agreed to the email, I just included her name because it seemed appropriate. I scheduled it to send Sunday evening, giving people 2 days' notice before they would have traveled for the wedding. Saturday was harder. It should have been my wedding day in an alternate timeline, the bachelor party, the rehearsal dinner, all the pre-wedding chaos. Instead, I spent it helping Danny reorganize his garage and trying not to think about what could have been. That night, Emily texted again, Sarah's in bad shape. She didn't go to work all week. Mom's staying with her. I didn't respond. What could I say? I was sorry she was hurting, but not sorry enough to take her back. There was a difference. Sunday evening at 6 p.m., the email went out. My phone started buzzing immediately, texts from friends, family members, distant relatives I barely remembered inviting. Most were supportive. Some were confused. A few were angry, accusing me of wasting their time and money on travel arrangements. My Aunt Linda called. Your mother told me what happened. I'm so sorry, honey. Thanks, Aunt Linda. Have you considered couples counseling? Sometimes these things can be worked through. It's over. There's nothing to work through. Marriage is hard work, John. You can't just give up when things get difficult. We're not married. And she wanted to marry someone else. That's not a difficulty you work through. Oh. A pause. I see. Well. You know best, I suppose. After she hung up, I turned my phone off. I'd dealt with enough well-meaning advice for one day. Monday morning, what should have been my wedding day, I woke up in Danny's guest room and felt nothing. Not sad, not relieved, just empty. Melissa knocked softly around 8. We're making breakfast. Join us? I did. We ate scrambled eggs and talked about anything except weddings or Sarah or the fact that I should currently be getting ready to walk down an aisle. It was the kindest thing they could have done. Around 10, my phone, turned back on, rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. John? This is Richard Chen. Sarah's father. I'd always liked Richard. He was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who measured his words carefully. Hi, Richard. I wanted to call and apologize. That surprised me. For what? For my daughter. For what she's put you through. Sarah's mother and I raised her better than this. What she did, pining for another man while planning to marry you, that's unacceptable. Richard, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You were going to be my son-in-law. I was looking forward to it. You're a good man, John. You didn't deserve this. My throat tightened. Thank you. That means a lot. Sarah's devastated, but that's her own doing. She made her choices. Now she has to live with the consequences. I just wanted you to know that her mother and I don't blame you. We understand. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Richard's call had given me something I didn't know I needed, validation from someone in Sarah's family that I wasn't the villain of this story. The next few weeks blurred together. I moved out of Danny's guest room and into a studio apartment downtown. Small, expensive, but mine. I went back to work and deflected questions from coworkers who'd known about the wedding. I deleted Sarah's number permanently and blocked her on social media. Danny told me she'd moved back in with her parents temporarily. That Mark had requested a transfer to a different department to avoid awkwardness. That she'd been seeing a therapist twice a week. I didn't ask for these updates, but Danny seemed to think I needed them. Maybe I did. Maybe knowing she was okay, or at least on the path to okay, made it easier to move forward. 6 weeks after the cancelled wedding, I ran into her mother at the grocery store. Carol Chen had always been kind to me, if a bit overbearing about wedding planning. She looked older now, tired. John, she said, spotting me in the cereal aisle. How are you? I'm fine. You? Managing. Sarah's doing better. Slowly. I nodded, unsure what to say. I wanted to thank you, Carol continued. For what? For not dragging this out. For not marrying her just to avoid the embarrassment. A lot of men would have gone through with it anyway, then been miserable. You were brave enough to walk away. I don't feel brave. No one ever does in the moment. But you'll see. You did the right thing. Sarah will see it too, eventually. She patted my arm and walked away, leaving me standing there with a box of cereal I didn't remember picking up. 2 months post-cancellation, I went on my first date. Danny had set it up with one of Melissa's coworkers, a woman named Jennifer who taught elementary school. We met for coffee, talked about everything except my cancelled wedding, and it was fine. Not electric, not life-changing, but fine. I didn't call her again. It was too soon. But it felt like progress. 3 months after, I got an email from Sarah. My filter should have caught it. I'd blocked her main address, but she'd used a different one. John, I don't expect you to read this, but I need to say it anyway. You were right about everything. I wasn't ready to marry you. I was in love with an idea of someone else and it wasn't fair to you. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I wasted your time. I'm sorry I didn't figure this out before we got so far. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you find it. I really do. I'm working on myself. Therapy has helped. I'm not dating. I'm just trying to understand why I did what I did. I think part of me was scared of the commitment and latched onto Mark as an escape route. That doesn't excuse it, but it's the truth. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. And that I understand why you left. Take care of yourself. Sarah. I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing to say back. She'd apologized. I'd accepted. That was all we had left. 4 months after what would have been my wedding day, I was having dinner with Danny and Melissa when she asked, "Are you dating anyone?" Not really. But you're open to it? Eventually. Why? Because Melissa has a friend, Danny started. Don't do that, I interrupted. Don't try to set me up. I'll date when I'm ready. Are you ready? Melissa asked gently. I thought about it. The ache when I thought about Sarah had faded to a dull awareness, like a bruise that no longer hurt but hadn't quite disappeared. I could go days without thinking about her. I'd stopped checking to see if she'd tried to contact me. I'd stopped playing the what-if game in my head. Maybe, I said. Getting there. 5 months after the cancelled wedding, I was promoted at work. Nothing dramatic, just a step up with more responsibility and better pay. I celebrated by buying a new couch for my apartment and finally unpacking the last boxes from the move. In one of those boxes, I found photos from the engagement party. Sarah and I, surrounded by friends, glasses raised, smiling like we'd figured out the secret to forever. I almost threw them away. Instead, I put them in a folder in the back of my closet. Not to remember the good times, but to remember the lesson: trust is everything, and once it's broken, there's no putting it back together. 6 months after, I ran into Mark at a restaurant. He was with someone, presumably the girlfriend he'd mentioned, and looked surprised to see me. John. Hey. Hey. An awkward pause. His girlfriend glanced between us, confused. This is John, Mark said to her. We met through work. Not quite true, but I didn't correct him. We exchanged brief pleasantries and I excused myself. As I walked away, I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, no curiosity about what Sarah saw in him. He was just a stranger who'd inadvertently been cast in someone else's drama. That felt like closure. 7 months later, I went on a second date with a woman I'd met at a friend's birthday party. Her name was Claire, she worked in marketing, and she laughed at my jokes without seeming like she was forcing it. We went to a comedy show, then got late night pizza, and for the first time since everything with Sarah, I felt something other than numbness or sadness. I felt hopeful. Claire and I saw each other once or twice a week for the next month. It was casual, easy, uncomplicated. She didn't ask about my past relationships, and I didn't volunteer. When she finally did ask if I'd been married before, I told her the truth. I was engaged. It didn't work out. She wanted someone else. I'm sorry. I'm not. Not anymore. And I meant it. The anger had faded. The sadness had faded. What remained was gratitude. Gratitude that I'd overheard that phone call, that I'd learned the truth before it was too late, that I'd had the strength to walk away. 8 months after the cancelled wedding, Danny called me on a random Thursday night. "Wanna grab a beer?" "Sure. What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to catch up." We met at our usual spot, a dive bar near his place that served cheap drafts and pretzels that tasted like cardboard. After the second round, Danny said, "You seem different." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you're not carrying around the weight of it anymore." He was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped defining myself by what Sarah had done. I'd stopped seeing myself as the guy who got dumped 2 weeks before his wedding. I'd started just being myself again. "I feel different," I admitted. "Better. Good. You deserve to feel better." We clinked glasses. It felt like the end of something and the beginning of something else. 9 months after, Claire and I had our first real fight. Nothing catastrophic, just a disagreement about holiday plans that escalated into a discussion about where the relationship was going. She wanted more definition, more commitment. I wasn't sure I was ready. "I'm not trying to rush you," she said. "But I need to know if you're actually invested in this or if I'm just helping you get over your ex." The question stung because part of it was probably true. But only a small part. "I'm invested," I said. "I'm just cautious. The last time I committed to someone, it blew up in my face. I'm not her. You know that, right?" "I do. But it's hard to unlearn the fear." We worked through it. Claire was patient in a way Sarah had never been. She didn't push, didn't demand, just gave me space to figure out my feelings. By the time the holidays rolled around, I was ready to meet her parents. 10 months after the cancelled wedding, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah was engaged. To someone she'd met through a dating app, apparently. They'd only been together 5 months. Danny texted me, "Did you hear about Sarah?" "Yeah." "You okay?" "Yeah. I hope she's happy." And I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven her, forgiveness felt too complicated, but because I'd moved on. Her life wasn't my concern anymore. 11 months after, Claire said "I love you" for the first time. We were making dinner in her apartment, and she said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I love you too," I said back. And I did. It wasn't the same as what I'd felt for Sarah, it was steadier, more grounded, built on honesty instead of illusion. Claire knew my history, my baggage, my fears, and she loved me anyway. 1 year after what would have been my wedding day, Claire and I took a trip to Seattle. We hiked in the mountains, ate seafood by the water, stayed in a hotel with a view of the Sound. On the last night, she said, "I'm glad you didn't marry her." "Me too. Not just because you ended up with me. Because you deserve someone who chooses you first." "I got that," I said, taking her hand. "I got you." It wasn't revenge, exactly. Sarah hadn't suffered some spectacular downfall. She'd moved on with her life. I'd moved on with mine. But there was something satisfying about the trajectory, about the fact that I'd walked away from someone who didn't value me and found someone who did. About the fact that I'd refused to settle for being second choice and ended up with someone who made me feel like the only choice. Sarah had gotten what she wanted too, in a way. She'd gotten a fresh start, a chance to figure out what she actually wanted instead of building a life on obligation and fantasy. Maybe her new relationship would work out. Maybe it wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. The real payback wasn't about hurting her or proving something. It was about reclaiming my life. About refusing to marry someone who didn't love me the way I deserved to be loved. About having the courage to walk away even when it cost me $34,000 and a 3-year relationship. The real payback was the life I was building with Claire, the happiness I'd found on the other side of heartbreak, the knowledge that I'd chosen myself when it mattered most. That was the revenge, not against Sarah, but against the version of myself that would have settled for less. As I sat on the hotel balcony in Seattle, watching the sun set over the water with Claire beside me, I thought about that moment in the hallway outside our bedroom. The moment I'd overheard the truth. The moment everything changed. If I could go back, would I warn my past self? Tell him to brace for impact? No. Because that moment, as painful as it was, had set me free. Free from a relationship built on illusion. Free from a future where I'd always wonder if I was enough. Free to find something real. I squeezed Claire's hand. She squeezed back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How lucky I am." That's a good thing to think about. It was. And for the first time in a year, I believed it completely. The story could have ended there, neat and tidy. But life doesn't work that way. 3 months later, 14 months after the cancelled wedding, I saw Sarah one more time. I was at a bar with colleagues, celebrating a work milestone, when she walked in with her fiancé. We made eye contact across the room. She froze. I nodded, a small acknowledgement that said nothing and everything. She nodded back. We didn't approach each other. Didn't wave, didn't speak, didn't pretend the past year hadn't happened. We just existed in the same space for 30 minutes until she and her fiancé left. Claire noticed. Was that her? Yeah. How do you feel? I thought about it. Nothing. I feel nothing. And that was the truth. Sarah had become a chapter in my story, not the whole book. An important chapter, one that taught me what I wouldn't accept, what I deserved, how to walk away, but just a chapter nonetheless. The real story was the one I was writing now. With Claire. With the life I'd built after everything fell apart. With the understanding that sometimes the best revenge is just living well. Sarah had wanted Mark but settled for safety with me. I'd wanted Sarah but refused to settle for someone who didn't want me back. In the end, we'd both gotten what we needed, a chance to start over and figure out who we actually were without each other. I raised my glass to my colleagues, toasting the promotion I'd earned through the hardest year of my life. Claire leaned into my shoulder, solid and real and here. Outside, the city lights flickered on as evening settled in. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably happy. Or trying to be. Or figuring it out. It didn't matter anymore. Her story and mine had diverged, two paths that briefly intersected and then split off in different directions. I chose my direction. And that choice, painful, expensive, terrifying as it was, turned out to be the best decision I'd ever made. Not because it hurt her. Not because it proved something. But because it saved me. That's the payback nobody talks about. Not the dramatic confrontation or the perfect comeback or the poetic justice. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you valued yourself enough to walk away from something that wasn't right. Of rebuilding. Of finding someone who chooses you first, every time, without reservation. 14 months after my life imploded, I was happier than I'd been in years. Maybe happier than I'd ever been with Sarah, though I'd never admitted that to myself at the time. Claire touched my arm. You ready to head out? Yeah. Let's go. We walked out into the cool evening air, leaving the bar, and Sarah, behind. Ahead of us, the city stretched out in endless possibility. Beside me, Claire's hand found mine. I didn't look back. There was nothing back there I needed anymore. The real story, my story, was just beginning.